Jesus didn't come to be a savior.
The Bible has been translated, many versions, like a bit of a broken telephone thing. Sometimes you get to it and it's like, wow, that's not what it originally said at all. I just got really deep into the teachings of Jesus. Jesus never says, I'm your Lord and Savior. These are more the teachings of Paul. Wait a second. I'm following Yeshua. I didn't agree to follow Paul.
For 18 years, you were a pilot?
Yeah, flying planes, cars, the girls, the money. It's not for the greater good of all. I would love to make an impact besides just flying people around. The seminal moment was really going to Peru and sitting with ayahuasca. I asked, how can I make an impact? You can bring plant medicines to the world.
You've had this product, microdose mushrooms. Well, how do you get around selling it? And you're like, it's legal. What?
This is going to sound crazy or however it sounds, but the mushrooms showed me Amanita. I was on psilocybin. I started getting these images, started researching. This mushroom is legal and it's psychedelic. It helps with anxiety, addiction, PTSD, counteract fear. Imagine a world with no fear. God created mushrooms. The more I get into mushrooms, the closer they bring me to Jesus. Go figure.
The church didn't love that idea.
They would say like astrology, psychedelics, it's evil and it's dark. But what they're really doing is like they're promoting fear. You go look at all these ancient churches, you're going to find sacred mushrooms in so many artworks. Psychedelic just means soul revealing. You're not going to have some hallucinogenic trip. No, it's just going to start to communicate with you on a soul level.
Oh, it feels good after that sauna.
It's a good sauna.
Got in the cold. It's been a while. I was telling you that I've been out of practice with the cold, and I'm feeling it came actually up in my journaling this morning. It's like reintroduce that. Today was perfect. Coming out of the sauna is easier. It was in there for just a little while to kind of cool the body down, but yeah, it feels like today feels like a good day. Like it's shifting this. It's a bit of a pattern interrupt. I think I was telling you, just feel like I've been in this season of, when we kind of put a word to it, but being very reactive to the world. And I think you had pinpointed what kind of happened to you on Monday, but it's usually just a simple glance at the phone.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a text message or there's something. And today I looked at my phone to see what time it was. I was like, okay, I can get up now. And then it wasn't until I did my meditation and did my journaling that I looked at my phone. So that's a great, like, just a reminder.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been times over the last couple of months where I've like slept with my phone and an earpiece and like listening to a podcast in the middle, like things that I just know aren't the way for me. But again, it's almost like I had to go through like a longer period to see like what that was doing to my sleep and how I would feel the next day.
Yeah.
And like last night was such a difference. And I think as I was sharing with you, there's been a bit of an affinity over the last month of just having a little indica gummy, just chill out for the night. And I have enjoyed that. And I feel like that's run its course because it has affected my sleep in the sense that I just don't feel great in the morning.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, sometimes it's great to get those little contrasts. You know, we see what it's all about to realize there's another way, you know, and like we talked about earlier, but starting the morning off where you're intending, you know, you're the captain of your ship and you're intending, okay, I'm going to set my course this way today, as opposed to, you know, how I did the other day and looked at my phone to start the day. And now I'm in reactivity mode to all these, you know, messages, apps and emails and all this kind of stuff. It's a total 180. And now it's like, I'm just reacting to everything that's happening instead of, no, I'm the captain of my ship and I'm going to go this way. And sometimes we just need that contrast to see what is the way. And deep down, what is the way.
I knew the whole time.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
What is it about that when we know? And I feel like I've done kind of enough work at this point where, like, I really know. Like that I'm waking up every hour and a half and I'll put like another 15 minutes on whatever the podcast is and right, the sleep timer. And I may last a minute or two, but like I know the phone shouldn't be in bed with me, for crying out loud. And yet, do you have a sense of what that is?
I think I have a bit of a sense of it, and I do it too. We all do it. And I think what it is, the sense I'm getting is it's the opponent, it's the opponent, the training partner, the adversary, and that's the thing that gets us to react. And I look at it as, that voice in our head that's, going for, oh yeah, the snooze button, or yeah, a little 15 minutes more of the podcast when we should be sleeping, or this kind of stuff. And it's like going for these little comforts, but those comforts over time, they stack up, and, they could take us on a different path where we're trying to protect ourselves and we're trying to be safer and more comfortable. But what I've learned, Cal, is like, it's really going into the uncomfortable, maybe just for a few moments or something, but by going to that uncomfortable, unknown, and trailblazing a new path, like that's really where the adventure is. And that opponent is just always kind of taking us into that comfort zone. And I think this is one of the bigger challenges that we all face, especially as men, is not succumbing into the comforts. It's like we've been so far removed from nature where things can be really uncomfortable in nature. Like go camp out in the forest for 24 hours with a sleeping bag. It's pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where we came from, right? So now it's like, yeah, we have these beautiful homes and great vehicles and all this technology and stuff. It's wonderful. I love it too. I use it. I'm a Taurus. I love all these, material things. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I also realize if I get too comfortable, what happens, is that opponent, that voice in the head gets louder and louder. And then all of a sudden I'm following what the voice in the head wants me to do, as opposed to, no, I'm the boss. I'm the captain of this vessel. And it's my thoughts. And the voice in my head then follows me, So this has been my experience, especially over the last couple of years, is getting really clear with what the voice in my head is saying. And if it's bringing me, and just being like observing what it's saying. And is it bringing me down this path of comfort, or is it here to serve me? There's only one captain of the ship. You can only serve one master. So am I serving the creator, the God, the higher self, the soul, higher power, whatever, universe, whatever label, people want to call it? It's cool. Or am I serving that voice, the opponent, that's like, oh, just do, have the extra brownie, or have the, the extra 15 minutes of snooze time, like, who am I serving? Can only serve one master. And this, I believe everybody's going through this, myself included. But yeah, I just become more aware of this, and I just like, no, let's go into the uncomfortable path. Let's see what this is about. And in that, I think there's a lot of growth.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, the comforts beget more comforts, and it becomes it's that slippery slope. Which I think is what I was experiencing when I let go of some of the cold water practices and the meditation. And it had been a while since I journaled, and then all of a sudden I'll just take a little indica here and I'll sleep in because frankly my body needed it. So at least I feel like I had the awareness that I needed that. Where I have tripped up in the past is when I've recognized this, is trying to do a complete overhaul, overnight.
Sure.
And that hasn't necessarily worked or at least been sustainable. And so where is the nuance in allowing some comfort and also having that discipline and serving? And is it as simple as that morning practice of tuning in of, when we've talked about this, something that's new for me is this idea of prayer. And when you're wanting to reach, this is something you shared with me last time we were hanging out, was when I want to reach for that comfort, just pause and listen.
Yeah. Yeah. The pause and listen is an amazing technique that I talk about to my students and friends and team and all that kind of stuff. Is like, yeah, just take a pause. Don't react to the voice that wants the comfort. It's like, just pause. And then does the voice get louder or does it dissipate? But it's really about allowing your higher self to be the captain of the ship as opposed to the voice. Because then it's like the voice has someone on a leash, like you're on a leash and then it's like, it's all about unleashing, you want to unleash your true self. You want to, awaken the giant within, like Tony Robbins says, or be the hero of your own story, or all these great teachers, they're saying the same thing. So I'd say, yeah, it's about a pause is amazing technique on how we could do this. It's just like, pause, breathe. Why do I want this thing? And see what comes up from there. Like, am I avoiding something? Because if we're avoiding something, that thing really has control over us again. So it's like, that means I'm giving my power away. That means whatever this thing has control over me. So it's like, I'm in the season or the practice where it's like, no, I want to face whatever this thing is that I'm maybe avoiding. And I do this through a bunch of ways. Fasting is one of them. We could get into that, but back to direct your question, I'd say, like, yeah, starting your day with the practice, and being intentional. It's really filling up your own cup with higher frequency type stuff, right? You're being intentional. You're being purposeful. You're being clear. And, you start to, you're loving yourself and not necessarily your identity self, but your higher self, your soul. You're now having this kind of communication on a more of a soul level, right? And when one does that, I believe, like, you're really starting to fill up your own cup now. And then when you have a full cup, you get to show up the rest of the day to your loved ones, to your wife, to your kids, to your team, everybody, because you got a full cup. Instead of like, I'm like I did the other day, waking up, I didn't fill up my cup. And then I'm just showing up to everybody kind of like, my cup's half full, my cup's half empty. I don't even know how to I'm stuck in this reactive pattern. And for me, like, reactivity is kind of really the enemy, and maybe one of the only enemies out there is just to react. Like I shared with you earlier, is like all the biggest mistakes in my life, call them mistakes or just lessons that I had to learn, were because I was too reactive. I sent the email too early, or I snapped too early on a colleague or something like that. Like, no, just pause, breathe, reflect. Like, there's no rush, really. Like, we have 24 hours every day that we're gifted.
Yeah.
And it's like, just make the best of those 24 hours, and then there's no regrets and there's no guilt or shame and all this kind of stuff that leads to all these other things. So I'd say it's a long way of saying it, but man, starting the day with that intentional morning practice that really fills your cup up, like tapping into that soul, not the left brain conditioned, fear-based mind, reactive. What if this? What if I lose this? What if this? Like, go the opposite of that and just see what happens. Do it for 30 days and watch yourself build momentum.
I'm just reminded of, in 2024, I'd say the spring, I was having guests come in that were like specifically there to teach me something. And I'm not saying that in the latter part of the year that wasn't happening,
yeah, sure. Yeah.
But I'm getting a very strong sense that I mean, you and I met a month ago.
Yeah.
And at a little gathering we had here, and we've gotten to hang out a couple of times, and there's been a lot, as I've stepped into, again, it sounds so silly to say at 53 that I'm just stepping into prayer for the first time, but
it's wonderful.
You've helped kind of expand that for me. And then I know the things that we've even talked about in the sauna are things that like are really top of mind for me. And it's stuff that you've been wrestling with. And I think you'd be the first to admit that you don't got to sort it out, but you've got some ideas around it that have worked for you. And so I'm excited to kind of dig deeper into this. And one in particular, and we have talked about this, but not on the podcast. I mean, I just started going to church.
Yeah.
And something I mean, a month ago, I would have never thought I would say that.
Yeah.
I had such an aversion to the institution, I guess, of organized religion. And we went Christmas Eve, which we sometimes go, sometimes don't. Peyton always likes to go. Sometimes I'm game for it. And for whatever reason, I really enjoyed the experience. And so I committed to continue to go. And when I shared this with you, but what I love about this church is there's the music, there's a teaching, and then there's music. And it's super simple. And I've been able to pull things from the teachings that have been, resonant and, but as I've explored this aversion to church, you kind of came in with your experience, which was really helpful because you gave like a lot of context of it, the things that I couldn't sort out, that I haven't studied the Bible, but I have a general sense of kind of what's out there. And so I just love to just explore that with you here, like this concept of the teachings of Jesus, from Jesus, and then other teachings that are, I suppose, I don't know how best to say it, but
contradictions or little
they don't
distortions.
They don't quite line up. And the thing that has always stuck with me over the years was that, in my understanding, that Jesus didn't come to be a savior. Right. And I never quite get the line right, but you will do things.
Oh, you'll do greater things than I. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, that's not savior talk in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then as you and I kind of have dug deeper into this, and you've shared again your experience and your kind of reading of the Bible, it's started to fall in line for me a lot more. So I don't even know where to go with that, but
let's swim in that. It's I love that you're going to church. Like anybody that knows me knows, I spent a lot of time in church over the last 4 or 5 years. I loved it. I love the music. I love listening to the sermons, and there's wisdom in there. There's so much wisdom in the Bible. Like there's so much. It's filled with wisdom, and those are, I think wisdom is one of the biggest pillars of this life that we come to experience in this earth game, this earth school. It's like there's just so much wisdom that we could tap into. And what really is wisdom? Well, wisdom is like you learn the knowledge, and that's one part of it, but you have to apply it in your life. You have to embody it. Otherwise, it's just kind of like information, right?
Yeah.
So wisdom is really like embodying these core values, these core principles, and the Bible is filled with it. It's awesome. And I know everybody, has their own religious views, spiritual views, and that's great. I'm not here to convince anybody about anything. I'm just sharing my experiences. I went to church similar to you. I love the music. I felt all these feelings come up, and it's beautiful. And it was a spiritual experience. And then I'm listening to the pastors, and they're sharing these wisdoms. Some things are hitting really deep. Some things are not really hitting at all. But one thing that kept hitting over and over was the teachings of Jesus. I was like, wow, this Jesus guy is incredible. Everything he says is just so profound and sometimes so simple, but sometimes there's layers onto it. And I just got really deep into the teachings of Jesus, and the way I look at it, Cal, is I like having role models. If I'm going to play basketball, I'm going to study Michael Jordan. I'm going to study Steph Curry. I'm going to follow how they play. If I'm going to, play poker, I'm going to watch, Doyle Brunson or, one of these guys. So it's all this kind of stuff. If I'm going to do martial arts, I'm going to study Bruce Lee or John Jones. And if I'm going to study how to be an amazing human being that's spiritually enlightened, I'm going to study Jesus. He's, pretty well universally accepted as the most amazing, spiritual master ever, to say the least. Some people think he's God. Some people say he's the son of God, but everybody pretty much agrees this guy was an amazing spiritual master and spiritual teacher. So it really got me diving deep into what Jesus said, and following his word and all this kind of stuff. And it just got better and better and better. And the guy is really all about, he has amazing wisdoms. Everything he says is so wise because he really embodied it. He lived it out. He was truly the embodiment of wisdom, which I believe is the one, core pillar. And the other core pillar that's just as equal, if not, it's just as equal, is love. It's, you have wisdom and you have love. The love of wisdom and the wisdom of love, and I believe Jesus was the guy that embodied this more than anybody that I could find. We have the Buddha, we have the Krishna, amazing as well. They're all in the same building, same floor, they're all hanging out. It's wonderful. I'm not trying to, say one is better than the other. No, I'm just saying everything is, Jesus, Yeshua talks about, and he lived it out, and the Bible goes into this. And then my experience was, okay, so I want to learn as much about Jesus as I can, so I'm doing precept Bible study, which is the most in-depth Bible study you could do. We go line by line, word by word, and you translate the words to try to get to the deeper meaning of it all, because the Bible has been translated, many versions, hundreds of versions, and it goes back from different languages. And, as you can imagine, as you're translating from different language to language and then different version to version, it kind of changes. There's
you get a couple. I see. There's nuance between this word means a couple different things in this language, and then you get a bit of a telephone deal.
Yeah, a bit of a broken telephone thing going on, and sometimes you get to it and it's wow, that's not what it originally said at all, and that's kind of alarming. You're wait a second, because a lot of people that are all about the Bible are this is the word of God and there's no ifs, ands, or buts on this thing. Okay, great. But when you really start to break it down, you see that there's some things, broken telephone, that's going on here. So it's okay, that's a bit alarming for me. And it just got me to dive deeper and deeper into it. And one thing I found was everything that Jesus says, for me personally, just resonated as absolute truth. Absolute truth. And then when things, were said or shared, whether it's Bible study or church, that were going against or contradicting or different or just distorted from what Jesus says, it was wait a second here, Jesus is saying this, and over here, this is different than what Jesus says. Jesus never says, I'm your Lord and Savior. Jesus never says all you got to do is believe in me and all your sins will be washed away, or, this kind of stuff. These are These are more the teachings of Paul. You know, for those that don't know, like Paul wrote more than half the New Testament. And yeah, there's a lot I could get into about Paul, but Paul is not Jesus. I'll just say that. You know, Paul was a self-proclaimed apostle.
Okay, so explain that, because that it could be just a throwaway line, but there he had his apostles.
Yeah, he had his disciples.
Yeah.
You know, he had the people that were the closest to him that he hand chose. You know, I don't think any Bible scholar will dispute that. Like Jesus had his close circle, right? And his people that he chose,
His
you know,
kind of men's group.
He's got his men's group that they followed him everywhere, and they gave up their lives to be with him, and they studied. He was their teacher, and they followed him around, and they got to be really close with him. So it's like, you know, put yourself in that position. You have your core group of people. And as Jesus' life, you know, progressed, he really, you know, bonded with some of these people. Like one of them is James, his blood brother. Like a lot of people don't talk about that or don't know about that, but James, like his blood brother, closest person to him. And as Jesus is, you know, there's evidence that Jesus says, you know, if you're going to follow anybody after I die, listen to James. Like James is the closest one to me. Okay, great. John, you know, his other best friend, John, the one that Jesus loved, they say in the Bible. Like that's how John refers to himself, like the one that Jesus loved. Everybody knew John and Jesus were super close. And Peter, the other one that, you know, Peter said, Jesus says he's the rock, you know, he's the one that's really driving the message home. He's very, you know, he was illiterate, but he had the message, you know? So all these people really, you know, carried on the message of Jesus after. And then here comes Paul, who was once named Saul. And Saul, you know, devoted the most early part of his life to killing the early followers of Jesus. It's a bit of a red flag.
And just so for people who don't have much of a grasp of the Bible, or, you know, so what was Paul's ideology at that point?
Yeah, so he was against Christianity. He was against early form of Christianity, Jesus and of Nazareth, Jesus and the Nazarenes, and it went against the church. You know, went against Judaism and this kind of stuff. So it was like a threat. It was a threat to the church, and he devoted his life to killing hundreds, maybe thousands of early, you know, Jesus followers.
Not great.
Not great, to say the least. You know, it's like, it's pretty wild stuff, you know, like, you know, essentially like you're a serial killer. If you're killing hundreds of people, thousands of people, like it's pretty intense stuff. And then anyway, he's going through the desert, and he's on the desert, and he's on a horse, and he gets this vision of Jesus. Jesus comes to him in a vision and says, dude, what are you doing? Like you're killing all my people. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, you're killing all my followers. And he has this revelation that he's like, holy shit, I fucked up, you know, pardon my French. But he realizes, like, Jesus just came to him and he's like, yeah, whatever you're doing is totally wrong and unacceptable. So the guy goes and hides for 3 years and basically probably has this like mental breakdown, realizing like, wow, everything I've been doing is incorrect. And then he changes his name from Saul to Paul, and he reemerges, and he self-proclaims himself as the apostle that's going to convert Gentiles, non-Jews, into followers of Jesus. This is what he says is his role, is I'm going to convert people into this new way. And all you have to do is believe that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, and all your sins are forgotten, and you will get into heaven. And if you don't, you'll burn in hell forever. No big deal, you know?
So only recruiting Gentiles, not trying to convert Jews.
That was his role, exactly. And there's an interesting point about that, because there's a part in the Bible where Paul is in Romans, where a lot of Bible scholars say, oh, Romans is the best book and all this kind of stuff. Because at that point, Paul it's the only time where he's talking to Jews and Gentiles at the same time. And you could tell in that one, he's working the crowd. So he's saying a lot of good stuff about the law, and then he's talking to the Gentiles, and he kind of like you could kind of tell he's working the crowd, and you could kind of see into Paul how he is, because he's a very smart guy. He's very well educated. He's very clever. And but anyway, yeah. So then he goes, and that's his role, is to convince the Gentiles that Jesus is the guy. I agree. Jesus is the guy. He's the best. But he's also now coming out with this message that Jesus is your savior, and he died for your sins, and that's all you have to really do is believe in that, and don't worry about your actions. Don't necessarily worry about your how you treat people and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, it's good to be a good person, but it doesn't matter. You're a worthless sinner anyway, is kind of the message that he goes on. And I'm oversimplifying,
which I appreciate.
You know, for the people that don't know, and I'm sure I'll get a bunch of backlash from that, and that's totally okay. Like I'm just saying my experience, and I would challenge anybody to show where Jesus says, "I am your Lord and Savior," where Jesus says, all you have to do is believe in me, and you'll get into heaven. Jesus actually said the opposite of that in Matthew. He said, not all those that call me Lord will get into heaven. He's like, you didn't feed me when I was hungry. You didn't give me water when I was thirsty. You didn't, give me clothing when I was naked. And he said this to the apostles, his true disciples. And they're like, what do you mean, Lord? We were always there for you. And he's like, no, you didn't feed the poor. You didn't give them water. You didn't give them clothing when they're naked. And basically you're doing this to me, basically Jesus is saying, like, I am in all these people. I am the presence of God, and the presence of God is in all these people. So if you treat people like that, the people that actually need help the most, if you ignore them, you're ignoring me. So like, just because you call me Lord doesn't mean you'll get into heaven, which is essentially the opposite of what Paul is saying, is like, yeah, no, it doesn't matter what you do. All you have to do is say Jesus is your homeboy, and there's, you'll get into heaven. And then I'll just close it with this, is like, if you ever watch any of these near-death experiences, like there's a bunch of them on online where people actually die, they cross over, they left their body, and they all have a very, very similar experience where they go and they're shown they're shown their life story. Whether it's from an angel or a Jesus type person, a figure, or, some people think it's God himself, and they're showing them this, their whole life, every moment of their life, how they showed up and how they treated people and all this kind of stuff. And God is not judging them. They actually judge themselves, because they're seeing how they showed up. And there's a bunch of people that they're like, well, I believe in Jesus. Jesus is my guy. And the angel or the being or whoever it is, God, universe, is like, yeah, so what? Like, you missed the point. So it's like, this is kind of like evidence to me of like, that's what, these people actually died. They went to the other side, and I know from my experience, with plant medicine and psychedelics and psychonauting for many years, like there's definitely another side. There's definitely a spiritual world out there, spiritual realms. It's very real. And for me personally, everybody teach their own. But for me personally, Cal, I'm not going to take my chance and just say, yeah, I believe in this, when I've seen so many contradictions and so many different versions of the Bible and so many edited things. It's like, no, I'm going to be of service. I'm going to be the best human being that I can. I'm going to actually follow the way of Jesus the best the way that I can. And I will definitely come up short. I will never be as good as Jesus in that sense, but I'm going to give it everything I can. I'm going to put every ounce of gas that I have in the tank to make sure that, yeah, I'm going to be the best version that I can. I'm not just going to, throw it away because they said that's all you have to do. Right. So that's like that was my major, revelation with church. I love church. I love Christians. They're great people. Don't get me wrong, some of the best people I've ever met. But I think there's just a bit of a message missing there. That's like, no, you still got to show up, and your actions really still do matter. How you treat people really does matter.
How do Christians respond to this kind of open inquiry from you? If it's, I know that you're very careful in choosing your audience and not pushing you don't push anything on anybody, no matter what it is, whether it's religion or, eons or anything. But when it comes up and there's kind of an open space for you to share some of this stuff with someone who maybe has never thought about it that way, how is it received?
Yeah. Well, one, I never push it on anybody. It's like before I dive into that, it's like how it's received. It really depends where the person's at, and you can tell a lot by how someone reacts.
How much they've invested in this.
How much they've invested, how much their ego or their identity is wrapped up in a story. Because, usually when someone reacts to something, and I'm generalizing, but usually when somebody reacts or overreacts to something, there's a sting there. It's like, and usually something only stings if there's some truth to it. If I said to you, Cal, like, hey, you're obese, there's going to be no sting there, right? Like there's no truth to that. But if there was something I said that I was like, oh, that hurts a little. It's usually because there's something there that's like the identity is wrapped up into that. So, and that's a generalization, but still my experience with this is like, when I brought this to the Bible study leaders and the pastors and stuff like that, it was like, it was okay, but you could tell like their identity is very wrapped up in it. And that's okay. I'm not here to break people's mindset or their mainframe or whatever. Like, I'm just here to ask questions and just point to like, hey, what did Jesus say? This is what Jesus says. Isn't this what this is all about? Is Jesus? Like, we're all agreeing that whether he was the savior, or whether he was, the most amazing teacher, whether he was the son of God. Well, let's just dive into that and like, let's see what he says. Like, let him speak for himself.
What he literally says. Yeah.
Yeah. What he literally says. Like, let's just go with that as opposed to this Paul guy. That's all I'm saying. Like, we should be really questioning this Paul guy is my take on this whole thing. Like, I agreed, I got baptized in front of 2,500 people, 3,000 people, whatever it was. And I agreed that I'm following Jesus. I'm following Yeshua. I didn't agree to follow Paul. And I don't know how that all happened, but I have an idea. So yeah.
When you had shared with me that during one particular service, you just paid attention to how many times Paul was mentioned and how many times Jesus was mentioned. And
yeah, that was the biggest red flag for me. I'm there at Sunday service, which I love. I love going to church. I love the vibe. I love the whole thing. It's great. And I'm just listening. I'm an active listener. I'm a student of life. I don't have the answers. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a theologist. I'm an entrepreneur that is a student of life. And I will just continue to ask questions and be curious and be open, much like yourself, Cal. That's all I am. I'm just a follower of Jesus, really. I just want to be, learn as much about Jesus as possible. And I'm at church and I'm listening to the sermon and it's Paul this and Paul says this and Paul this. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, where's Jesus in all this, And then so I start counting and they literally said Paul's name over 50 times. I stopped counting at 50 times. I'm like, wow, this is like the Paul show here. And I'm like, and then I count how many times they're saying Jesus. And it said 5 times, So we're like, it's a 10-1. And I'm like, man, I just can't really like get behind this. Like, this is wild, And like, and they literally said in there, like, I remember the pastor saying, and God bless the pastor, man. He's a good guy. He's doing his thing. He's getting up there and he's doing what he feels is right. There's no disrespect. There's no judgment. But he literally said, he's like, there's nothing you can do in the eyes of God that will, get you into in heaven. And I was just like, wow, it's just so wild to me, like to think, like imagine, like you're God, and all these are your children of like they're his creation, and you're a father, Cal. Like imagine like saying like to your kids, like there's nothing you can do, basically. You're worthless in my eyes. But if you believe in Jesus, yeah, it's okay. Like, that's basically the message that I got. Like, he literally said, there's nothing you could do to get into to win over your father's favor. And I was like, I just don't buy that. Like, I just don't resonate with that. It doesn't seem to me like this all-loving creator, that these are his children, would look at us like these worthless sinners. But hey, if we agree that Jesus died for our sins, which Jesus never said, by the way, like, please, anybody that wants to challenge me, like, just show me where Jesus says that in the Bible, and I will concede.
And so where does that come from?
Paul.
I guess I could have guessed that.
Yeah. So it's like, why are you so gung-ho about Paul? That's my question to you. If you're getting triggered right now, like, I'm not trying to trigger you. I'm just saying, what's your affliction with Paul? Like, who is this guy to you? Like, why do you love Paul so much?
And as we were kind of talking in the sauna, it does seem that it certainly serves Paul to have this, like, don't even worry about the acts you've done. Like, just proclaim Jesus, your Lord and Savior, and you're good, because he's got a bit of a checkered past.
He's got a checkered past, to say the least. The guy killed a bunch of people, changed his name, and then, like, comes out with a new identity, and it's like, yeah, don't worry about all that. Like, I'm good now. I spoke to Jesus, and it's all good. And then his apostles were like, whoa, you saw Jesus in the flesh like we did? And he's like, no. He came and spoke to me. So did Satan, by the way. Like, he literally admits this. He's like, yeah, I've been visited by demons and Satan and Jesus. I'm talking all kinds of entities. And yeah, he told me it's all good. Just believe in me. And, like, yeah, to your point, it suits his story. Yeah. And if you really just look at it objectively, like, I know I'm being a little condescending here, but if you just look at it objectively, someone kills hundreds, maybe thousands of people, then you realize what you did was wrong. Don't you think the person is going to be going through some sort of mental torment, like some sort of mental health issues, like some sort of, like,
I could imagine some major disassociation, and, like, certainly the name change helps, but just like, I'm on this other path, whatever happened, that's not me. Boom.
Yeah. And I get it. Forgiveness is great, and there's a lot of amazing things that Paul says. Like, the guy's really smart. I give it to him. Like, Corinthians, like, there's some beautiful, beautiful passages in Corinthians. There's a lot of amazing things that Paul says. And he was really trying. Like, I'm not trying to knock the guy down here. Like, he did and said some amazing things, and he had good intentions. All I'm saying is that he's not Jesus. That's all I'm saying. So I'm following Jesus. That's my choice. If you want to follow Paul, by all means, follow Paul. Go ahead.
I like that, the way you phrase that, because it's like, look, you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. Like, Paul, there was a lot of great stuff that he shared, and there are inconsistencies in the way you've read the Bible, and you're going to lean on Jesus for what he said, versus, where Paul may have a bit of a biased view on some of these things, which I think most people would.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so curious about this stuff, because I said I've been interested, since I've started my journey. I have been interested in the work and the life of Jesus, and I haven't found a way to kind of separate that from Christianity in a sense, because there were things that just didn't feel right for me. There was, the Bible study that, my wife went to when we first got here, and she's like, these are some judgy women. Yeah. And from my understanding, Jesus wasn't really the judging type.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just see these people going to church and being super righteous.
Totally.
And it just, fucking guys cheating on their wives and just all the stuff.
Yeah.
But they go to church on Sunday, so they're good,
Yeah.
And I just, some super racist stuff. If you go into some other churches, it's just like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
And so you've helped me get in touch with, like, there is a difference between just following Christianity and following the teachings of Jesus.
Yeah.
And you've turned me on to a really close friend of yours, Aaron Abke, who's, I've started to watch some of his YouTube, his content there, and it has been fascinating. He's such a great resource for, people like myself who just don't jive with the message as they've understood it or seen it act out. And again, Aaron kind of lands it and shares the stuff that you're talking about too. The stuff where it's like, it ruffles some feathers because it does, you had shared with me that, like I'm so new to this space that Old Testament, New Testament, Ethiopia, like I'm still trying to work out what all that is.
Yeah.
There's books in here. There's not all the books in there. And someone wrote a bunch of the books and Luke's writing, because was Luke the one who was Paul's guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you got Matthew who's right.
Jesus' guy.
Yeah. So it's like, these guys have inconsistencies when they're talking about this kind of the same events unfolding. And so who do you really want to believe? Like Jesus's guy or Paul's guy? And then, there were guys who were financing the thing. And it's like, I never even thought about that this is to suit them. If you wanted to, I don't know if you want to paint it with a propaganda brush, but like when you're, writing your own story, the victors get to write the history, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
It's gotten me really interested in it. And what I'm trying to stay away from is the judgment piece.
For sure.
Because I think I was stayed away from it for so long. I was very judgmental.
Yeah.
Like, fuck those hypocrites. Like, what are you going to teach me the way you, kind of walk your walk? And so to go to church and since we've had some of these conversations, I've been to church and I love it, and I want to continue to be curious. And it's so much of the world has some connection to religious institution. I don't know if I'm there yet. But I certainly enjoy being in that space. And, for an hour, it just feels really good too. And it can just be that. And be around people that are feeling super connected, and it's a beautiful community. And but there's so much more to be explored there. I think my daughter's terrified that I'm going to become some Bible beater. It's just, she knows how I do things.
Right.
I go all in, just like you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to try to be a little more tempered. With this.
Me too, Cal. Like I'm not here to judge, and I've felt those feelings come up too, where I'm like, man, these people are being really hypocritical. And at the same time, that was probably me at one point. I was probably hypocritical. I'm such a flawed guy. I failed more than most people. I have so many failures. So it's like, I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to be curious. And, I'm so grateful for the church. I'm grateful for Christians. I'm grateful for the community because like you guys got me into Jesus, like you guys pointed me to Jesus and I was like, okay, I'm all in on Jesus. So much so that I just can't get enough of this guy's teachings and his wisdom and all this kind of stuff. So now I'm just like, I'm all about Jesus, so much so that I'm like very protective when any anybody else is saying anything different about it, I'm just like, well, let's look at that, and that's all. I'm just here to ask questions and be curious. And if I was somebody else, with their upbringing and their spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs and their parents and their education, I would think exactly the way that they do. So I don't judge. I'm like, I would be exactly like you do if I had your upbringing. And I get it. I was once where you were. And I'm just a fellow traveler in this world that's just on my path. And I'm like, hey, I'm finding some stuff here. What do you think about this? And I'm all for it. Like I'm showing up to this thing like completely objective. Like, hey, Jesus says this. Paul says this. I'm going to go with Jesus. That's my call. If you want to go with Paul, like, hey, that's cool. Paul says some great stuff too, but I'm just going with this Jesus guy. But yeah, and I love going to church. I love the music. I love watching, the sermons unfold. There's some wisdom in there. There's some things I don't agree with, and it's okay. Like it's all part of this this earth game, this earth school that we're living in, and nobody really has all the answers. Nobody has it all figured out. That's for sure. Because if they were, they'd be some enlightened being.
We'd be listening to them.
Yeah, we'd be like, oh my God, they have all the answers. Everybody's just trying to figure this thing out on themselves. And like, we're all just like kids that are aging, and some are aging better than others.
Yes.
But it's like, come on, like we're all just figuring this stuff out, Cal. Like, let's be real with each other here, Like I've been around celebrities and athletes and millionaires and billionaires. Like we're all on the same playing field. Some people have better skills than others.
Yeah.
Some have done more research than others, and that's great. And, but yeah, I look at everybody like we're all God's children here. And, I just want to make that part very clear is like, it goes back to what Jesus says. Like Jesus says, just love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor like you love God, like you love Jesus. And I think for me, like, that's just what I just go back to, like Jesus is just preaching love. And as long as we remember that, like there's no judgment. It's all love. I was once where you were once where I was, and we're all on this, we're all just traveling this earth together, walking each other home. And as long as we remember that, like, I think we'll all be okay. It's when we, the need to be right and the need to prove other people wrong. And when that comes out, I just laugh. I just laugh because I'm like, I was once that person. Yes. I used to want to prove people wrong.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So 2 things. I would love for you to repeat what you said in the context of, the 10 Commandments can be kind of hard to remember. And if I remember hearing a few weeks ago, there were originally like 600 and something.
Oh yeah. A bunch of laws in the.
So they broke it down to like the 10, you're good. And then Jesus is like, even without like, you don't need all that. Just say that one more time.
Yeah, Jesus came in like, yes, there was like, I think, 500 or 600 laws from the Torah that, Judaism would preach, and that's all great. And then Moses came, he's like, hey, and I'm oversimplifying again here, but he's like, hey, here's the 10 commandments. You follow these 10 commandments, you'll be good. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, covet your neighbor's wife, thou shalt not steal, etc. And Jesus came on the scene and he's like, yeah, no, I'm here to uphold the law. I'm not here to abolish the law. I'm here to uphold the law, which is really the law of love. Jesus is preaching the law of love. When you really start breaking down the translation, it's like, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The word that they're saying was the law, and the law was the law of love. Mm-hmm. The way of the law of love. You'll hear this a lot in ancient texts and spirituality is the way, the way of the law. It's so cool. The way of the law is about love. Mm. It's so awesome. Yeah. And Jesus is like, I'm here to uphold the law of love. What can be cooler than that? Like, It's like, yeah, no, it's all about love. And with that, I'm here to bring 2 more commandments. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor like you love yourself, or love. And it goes even better than that. He's like, because some people don't actually love themselves that much. So he's like, okay, so love your neighbor like you would love God. Boom. And I swear, if everybody really just did that, man, like what a life that would be. Like you're loving God, you're loving life, you're loving the I am presence. You know, Jesus says before Abraham was, I am. So Jesus is not saying to me, he's not saying before Abraham was, Jesus was there. Like he wasn't walking around before Abraham. He was like, no, before Abraham was, I am. It's like, that's the name of God, is I am. It's that presence in the first person present tense. Like every single human being that is living in that consciousness. We're all in consciousness. Everybody, we're all living in that consciousness. And I believe that's the Father. That's like God's mind. We're all living in God's mind of consciousness. And that's what Jesus is saying, is like before Abraham was, I am. So the I am presence is always there. And that's what we are living, is in that now, that I am. So if everybody loves the I am, which is now, which is God, it's all there is, right? We're not worrying about the future. We're not regretting the past. We're not reacting. We're not stressing. It's you and me right here. I am. You are, and we're in that, and there's love there. That's what I think he's getting at. And that's why, in the book of John, Jesus' closest friend, he says all these different versions of I am. I am the door. I am the light. He's not saying Jesus, I don't, this is my interpretation, but he's not saying Jesus, the person, is the light. Jesus is the door. No, he's saying I am, first person present tense, the light. I am, the door. I am the vine. I am the truth, the way, the life. It's the I am presence, because everybody can tap into the I am presence. And that's what Jesus is saying. Jesus actually said, if you want to go what Jesus says, don't you know that you are God's? That's what Jesus is saying. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's what Jesus says. Go back and look it up. Jesus says, don't you know that you are God's? So there's a lot of these things in the Bible that are overlooked. There's a lot of these things that, we get diverted to what other people are saying besides Jesus. And I just always bring it back to Jesus. He's got the codes, man. He's got the ultimate codes. So, yeah.
I want to do a bit of a thought experiment here, because I'm just thinking okay, let me be fair here. You and I we have the benefit of when new information comes in with regards to this, we don't have anything invested, right? It's not my livelihood. I'm not up.
Correct.
So imagine you've been preaching for 20 years. And someone approaches you and says, hey, so you mentioned Paul 50 times and Jesus 5. Like, is this Pollyanity? Is it Christian? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Like, how would I
react? Yeah. Totally. Right.
I mean, there's so much invested in something.
Yeah.
Right. And let's even go a step further and say that this person is living a life that is following the acts, not just proclaiming that, Jesus is Lord and Savior, but what do you do with that when this thing is revealed to you? Like, can you still teach? Like, how do you, because there are inconsistencies.
I mean, to me, it's undeniable that there's inconsistencies, and it's interesting to see how people react when you bring up the inconsistencies. And I always, my experience is I see them trying to harmonize it, trying to make sense of something.
Yeah.
And then usually they go on these kind of tangents that I'm waiting for the punchline. And I'm like listening, please show me how this makes sense. And it just doesn't, and they're trying to make it make sense. And then it's like, yeah, I could see how, your identity is wrapped up in this thing. I get it. It's like a doctor, that goes through their whole, life, and they're like taught all this thing about Western medicine. And it's like, okay, yeah, here's the drugs, here's the prescriptions, here's the vaccines and all this kind of stuff. And you go to them like, hey, doc, like, I don't know if this is the way, like, this is destroying the gut biome and destroying all this stuff. And like, these vaccines are actually, I don't know, this is kind of weird. And you see the doctor react like, no, don't you know this? Or I remember going to the dentist and being like, yeah, I don't know if I want the fluoride. What's up with this fluoride stuff, and they're like, well, no, they told us it's good in dentist school, so it's like, yeah, like it's all programming.
Yes.
And that's, it's funny what Jesus says about that. Like, let's just go back to what he says. Jesus had compassion, and that's where this brings me to, Cal, is like, Jesus had compassion for the sinners, right? He said, I'm here to come help the sinners. I'm not here to come help the righteous. And what did he mean by that? He meant that he knew that these sins were like essentially like programs, these 7 deadly sins of lust and greed and gluttony and envy and all these kind of stuff. They were programmed into us. And I see the sins, what Jesus is talking about is exactly like these programs. So like we go through this life in this matrix world, and we're programmed to think certain ways into our conditioned mind. It's in that 10% of our brain that just is programmable through school, through society, through sometimes our family and friends and environment and all this kind of stuff. But it's not necessarily our fault. Like, we've just been programmed into it. And that's where it's like, yeah, have compassion. That's why when I meet with these, the Bible study guys or the pastors, like, they're children of God too, man. I love them. Like, they're doing their best. And they actually have really good intentions to try to bring people to closer to God, closer to Jesus. And I also think that, yeah, maybe there's a chance they were just programmed with this Paul stuff. Why did Paul get to write half the New Testament? Why would you give a guy that killed hundreds of or thousands of people half the New Testament? Like, maybe like ask these questions and go back in history and see like who made those decisions. Like, I mean, it's the Catholic Church. Are we like really like, the Catholic Church has got a bunch of suspect stuff going on. I think that's like pretty common knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, they were raping kids. Hello.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, like there's no other business. I heard this somewhere too. I think it was Bill Burr, but like, there's no other business that's like, if you knew they were raping kids, I'll go back and like, Starbucks is raping kids. I'll go buy a Starbucks. Like, it would be a disaster. Right. But like, the Catholic Church did it, so it's okay. So it's like, it's wild to me. That's like, well, if you go back, the Catholic Church was the one that put these things in place. They put Paul's books in place. Well, yeah, like, I don't know. Like, it just brings up questions for me, and I'm just all about the truth, man. Like, I know when the truth hits, it's this resonance, it's this vibrational thing. I know you know this too, right? Like, it's undeniable.
Yeah,
we're electromagnetic beings. So there's a vibration. There's a frequency that when you say the truth, you know it. And when something feels off, you also just be like, yeah. And that, for me, there's just the things that are off. And I just keep going back to Jesus. And I do believe he is the way, the truth, and life. He's constantly showing us, and he wants us to be at the forefront of our consciousness in these times, because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, with technology and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect segue. So with this, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, that's a lot. I
love that.
It should be fun.
Yeah. Yes. With this, age of technology that we're living in, one of the things that has really impressed me with the way you're living your life and intending to live your life is to live closer to the ground and be able to access these technologies versus being on the hamster wheel of multiple, different technologies pulling at us, which is very common, and I know you fall into it as well from time to time. But what brought that awareness to you? Because for a number of years, I think you said for 18 years you were a pilot.
Yeah.
So probably weren't in that consciousness at that point.
Correct.
Or yeah.
Yeah, correct.
And so where did the shift come?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would love, before you get into I mean, I still can't believe you were a pilot. I mean,
yeah, big part of my life.
Yes.
It was cool.
What was the nudge you got that it was time to move on?
Oof. The nudge I got that it was time to move on was I really got into entrepreneurship and the business world. Like I was towards the end of my pilot career, I was a pilot for 18 years, flew, I think it was like 36 different type of aircraft throughout my career, private jets, commercial airliners, helicopters, badass helicopters too. So I was like, it was awesome. It was an amazing career. Towards the end of my career, I was flying private jets for wealthy individuals, entrepreneurs, these kind of things. And I got more and more exposed and integrated and involved in that world, and seeing how they operate and all this kind of stuff. And it was cool. I learned so much. Doors were opened, meeting all kinds of people, millionaires, billionaires. And what I got to realize is these are all just people, and like I said earlier, nobody really has it all figured out. A lot of people are pretending. There's there's a lot of bad actors out there too. And there's a lot of people that have some codes, and I get that. I'm just a student, I'm here to observe and listen, and I just trying to get as close to the light of the creator as possible. That's my whole ambition, is to dance with the divine energy of the creator. And, getting into these boardrooms and stuff like that, I was like, man, I would love to make an impact. I would love to make an impact onto the world besides just flying people around. And it was that was kind of the nudge. And also just realizing hey, if these people could do it, I could do it too. And it was not, I could hear the voice in my head saying, oh no, you can't do it. And I'm like, why not? It's that's realizing, like we said before, there's the opponent that's going to try to limit us. And if we can override that opponent and be like, no, I'm going to show you actually what I could do. And I'm going to push past these limits. And that's where, biohacking, plant medicine, psychedelics really showed me is you can overcome the opponent, and literally anything is possible, as long as you keep going towards the light. And sometimes you got to go into the darkness to really shine that light. But for me, Cal, that was the genesis of it all, was really realizing I want to make an impact in the world. Okay, how do I do that? That's one part of it. And a big part of that was okay, well, in order to do that, I got to really change myself. There's a famous quote, I think it's Rumi, that's I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. And that's really where it came on, because I was well, if I'm going to create some sort of impact in the world, I got to be able to change myself. I got to master myself first. I can't be driven by, the immediate gratification, by these things. So I had to really change my ways of being in a hedonistic lifestyle,
What did that look like for you?
Oh man, I really lived into the whole dream of the Matrix, money, cars, girls, sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
I was feeding that thing for a long time in my life. I'm not proud of that. That's what I did. Like most young men, I got sucked up into that, and I realized that doesn't create fulfillment. It's not the light of the creator. The light of the creator is actually all internal. And the creator lives within each and every one of us. And what that matrix world gets you to do is constantly chase something outside of yourself, where really it's all inside of yourself. And that's the last place that people will ever look, is inside of themselves. They'd rather do anything else than just sit and go within. And once I realized that, I was like, oh my God, this is a whole new game here.
Was there any like seminal moment, or it was just like there was a shift?
It was, well, the seminal moment was really going to Peru and sitting with ayahuasca, because it showed me that I had it, I was doing all this cool stuff in the matrix world, flying planes, the cars, the girls, the money. It's not the way. It's a way. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
It's a fun game to play for a while, but it won't leave you fulfilled. It's not, it's not going to, this is a good way to put it. It's like, it's not for the greater good of all. That was for Alex's good, Alex Wolfe's good. And that's where I was very much playing, was like, what is good for Alex? It's very limiting, man. It's very, it's weak sauce. So that was the shift. It was like, okay, instead of looking at things like what's good for Alex, let's look at things, what's good for Alex's future family. Let's look at what's good for Alex's future community. And then just expanding from there. And I could literally feel my mind, my soul, like start to expand in shifting the mindset from like what's good for me to what's good for we. And then the more I do that, like with every choice that I make, Cal, like, is this really good for all of us? Like, is this going to benefit humanity? In that, and like that's something I would, strongly recommend to any, especially young man or entrepreneur listening, is like, just have that mindset, like what's good for everybody. Man, it's like you get blessed with this protective life force energy, because that's really what the creator wants. Like the creator is looking for people, vessels to like go and make an impact, positive impact. Yes, it starts with yourself. Like you're not going to go make an impact if you're not, doing the work on yourself. But that was, I'd say, the real catalyst. It started with plant medicine. And yeah, I still got, sucked back into the spiral. The temptations are always there. And I succumbed to them. But I was able to grab myself, grab my mind by the head and be like, no, we're getting out of here. Like this isn't the way. There's another way. And for me, it's a long way of saying it, but I'll sum it up by saying is like, there's the conditioned mind that just wants for me, the individual. And then there's the divine mind, where is, I'd say, thousands of times more powerful. And once you tap into that divine mind, everything is there, and that's what I'm all about these days. And Jesus talked about this. Ian Gilchrist talks a lot about this. He's a wonderful guy. Marianne Williamson talks about this. Like it's about shifting the mind literally from that conditioned mind into the divine mind. And that's been like the total catalyst of everything for me.
And so you decide you step out of flying planes.
Yeah.
And is that when you got into the CBD business?
Yeah, it started in the cannabis business. So when I sat with ayahuasca said, I asked, how can I make an impact in the world? And it was like, you can bring plant medicines to the world if you want to.
Kind of a general plant medicine.
Medicine. And I was like, okay, what plant medicine can I bring to the world? Ayahuasca. And it was like, you could start with cannabis. And I was like, okay, rad. And I went to walked up to the Machu Picchu with my, best friend, business partner, Jeff. And we literally sat there and we prayed and we set intentions that we were going to bring plant medicines, cannabis to the world. And that was in 2016. And by the end of 2017, We had both formed our own companies. And by 2018, I had co-founded and created what turned out to be one of the largest cannabis companies in the world. And I had never started really, I had one other small business before that, but like it just goes to show like anything is truly possible. You just have to get out of your own way and truly believe and be passionate and give it all you got. And that's what I did. And it was awesome. It was an amazing ride. So yeah, I was still piloting, but you know, I joined forces with the guy that I was flying with. And yeah, I convinced them to start this company with me, and we did it. And it's still going on today. It has over 500 employees.
Oh no shit!
Yeah, it's some of my childhood friends work there, yeah. And it's got some of the top selling cannabis brands that I helped develop. And it was a whole dream come true. It was awesome. I learned so much about the business world. We took that company public. The ticker of that company is Love, which was something I was super proud about. Like, yeah, it was, you know, like we put Love on the stock market. It was cool.
Yeah.
But in that, it brought me down to, you know, other businesses, CBD in California. And when I was in the CBD business, I started really getting my own. I went back into the hedonistic lifestyle. Now I have money. I'm dating my celebrity dream crush. I'm driving a brand new Range Rover, living in Beverly Hills. And I wasn't fulfilled. Believe it or not.
Go figure.
Go figure.
Yes. Yes, I love it.
Right?
Yeah.
Wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah. But it's so important to scratch that itch. Like, don't take your word for it. Don't take my word for it. And it doesn't mean I got a nice car. I got a nice house. Like, it's just when I go looking for that to, you know, that be my warm blanket, it's not going to be. It may suffice for a short period of time, but it's not true. It's just me not feeling what I need to feel. Anyway, but yeah, I love, I always have a lot more trust in someone who's kind of walking this path, who has had an experience there and knows like viscerally what it feels like to have that type of success and be able to kind of get whatever you want, and you do it. And you're like, this is fucking cool. And it's like, what else? What else? It's like, oh yeah, there's always something else you want that you can buy, and it feels good for a moment. It's not that I don't still love driving my nice car, but it's just not the thing.
Not the thing.
Yeah.
So good. So well said. It's true. It brings up a couple of things for me with that. The major lessons that I learned. And I agree with you. All the young men, entrepreneurs out there, yeah, go climb that mountain. If that's the mountain that you want to climb, I know, because people are listening, they're like, oh, it'll be different for me when I get the money or when I get the girl or the thing. Yeah, okay. We'll see how that goes for you. Because when you climb that mountain, you realize there's a whole other range of mountains to climb. You know, it's just one mountain, and it's exactly like you said, Cal. There's a couple of things there that really come up for me. One is like, when you go into the world wanting, like, it's great to desire. Desire is like the strike of the match that sets, you know, it ignites things. Desire is awesome. Desire, it got me everything. It got me to where I'm at today. Is like, you want to desire, you want to think big, because the creator, it's looking for vessels to go and create these dreams in this world. Like, he's living through all of us, right? He's living literally within us. So you have to have the desire to go and create. It's a big part of it. But wanting, like, when you think of wanting, like something that you don't have, and it's something that you need, like you said, the blanket, so that you're filling a void, you're filling that empty cup with something external. It's two different things. And that's what I got stuck in, was like, oh, I want more, I want more, I want more. It's like, no, just desire. Like, okay, I have this vision, I have this dream, and then my passion is going to fuel that. It's a different thing. So there was that. And then there's the realization that in the Matrix world, you know, for a long time I was fueled, or I was on basically like a leash by material goods, food, and sex, women, basically. Like, I thought in my limited conditioned brain that those things would make me happy.
Mhm.
And I pursued those things to like stupid amounts of time and energy and money.
Sure.
Like, you know, like the
Yeah.
amount of time that I spent thinking about material goods, cars, you know, this kind of stuff, women, food. It's actually ridiculous. Like it was like, wow, it controlled so much of my psyche. So I realized that. And I was like, okay, if that got me there, what happens if I break the chains, if I unleash myself from these three things? And that was like the major lessons that I've learned in the last couple of years is like material goods have no power over me whatsoever. You know, I'm celibate, even though I'm in a relationship. It's, you know, we're focused on building the sexual energy and polarity to wait till we have kids. So it's a whole other thing. And I'm with one woman. It's great. I'm not, you know, distracted by other women. It's wonderful. And food. I finally got food under control too, which was the biggest challenge of them all, probably. Like it was my biggest coping mechanism, you know, when I was bored or, you know, I spend so much time thinking about my next meal or where I'm going to go to dinner and lunch and the smoothies and the this and the that. And I was like, wow, I spent so much energy thinking about this that it's like, what if I just don't have to think about this anymore? And once I broke that chain too, it was like, wow, just so much opened up. And now I just have so much more energy to focus on what I choose to focus on, which is really make an impact. You know, like, you know that about me. Like, I want to make a big impact in this world. And that's my desire. And as long as I align myself with that frequency, truly, that's not for me. It's not for my future family. It's not for, you know, even my friends or community. It's like, no, that's for the greater good of all. Like I'm going up against big pharma, big ag, big sugar, big tech. And it's like, okay, well, let's see what we could do here. And in that, like millions of lives can be impacted positively. So it's like, all right, well, I got to be as aligned and focused as possible. And these opportunities just keep coming. So it's pretty cool. You know, it's pretty cool to see how it all turns out here.
How long have you been doing the one meal a day?
6 months.
You have.
Yeah.
You love it.
I love it.
In the celibacy.
Celibacy, it started in 2022 and fell off the train a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Learned some really big lessons with that as well. Really big lessons, you know, not to get too into it, to respect my, you know, former partner and stuff like that. But we had made a covenant not to have sex before marriage as well too. And just really build that energy and build something sacred. And I'll just say this, like once we broke that covenant, we gave into temptation, we gave into, you know, the attraction and lust did become a part of that. The relationship, like it was one challenge after another. And that's just my experience. You know, I'm not saying that for everybody, but that was clearly my experience. Made a covenant to God and said, okay, we're going to build this thing. We're going to build a foundation, build on love and trust and all this kind of stuff and not be about sex. We gave in, you know, gave in to temptation. And the relationship was just rocky and challenging and really, really tough. And she was an amazing human being. You know, I have nothing but good things to say about her. We just couldn't get aligned, you know. And I think for me, it was really that just like it collapses like the polarity, you know. Like I find, you know, sexual energy is one of, if not the most powerful energy forces in this world. You know, like literally could create life, you know, like we're literally creating life. It's the closest thing to God that we can become, is like we create life into this world out of nothing. And that's, you know, my biggest dream, Cal. You know, I've shared with you and I admire that about you, that you're a dad. And I can't wait to get into that chapter of my life. It's the biggest honor I think a man can have. And that was the dream, you know? So it's like, build up so much energy with that. And then you come together with the woman and, you know, you have sex, you make love. It's beautiful. And then it has to restart, you know, the energy is like, and I notice a big difference, like when that energy collapses and then you have to rebuild the polarity. And I think a lot of people, deal with that. And I think society is kind of designed that way as well, where it's like constantly feeding us these images and over sexualization and all this kind of stuff, where you can really just build it and build it and build it with your partner, with someone you love. And you can make love too. You can make the most beautiful love, and it's a wonderful thing, but maybe just not the release for the man. And that's what I'm studying now, is these ancient sexual techniques, these tantric sexual things where, the man will just build and build and build his sexual life force energy, the chi. All these ancient wisdoms talk about this stuff. It's so cool. Like in the Eastern kings, the Eastern emperors would pass this information down to their sons and be like, listen, you can have sex, but just don't release the chi, and this was like the code that they would pass down from the royalty. And they knew this. So cool. And I think this is the mistake, or maybe not mistake, but the trap that society with porn and, all this kind of stuff, OnlyFans and social media and all this stuff is like it's just trapping these young men into releasing the sexual energy when you could build it and use it towards building something that's really valuable and meaningful, whether that's a relationship or a business or just something that you really can create fulfillment. So, yeah.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. And so just for clarity's sake, are you working with seminal retention, or just
Yes.
no, you are? So there is that intimacy and
yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
Because that works for a partnership where you're married, where it's like celibacy, in my understanding, is there's no penetration.
Right, correct. Yeah, so that's what I'm working with. No penetration.
Oh.
To be clear.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we made an agreement.
Yeah.
No penetration until, either we get married and or we're ready to bring a child into this world. And then it's like it's on purpose and it's a big thing.
So how would you guide someone like myself, for instance, who's curious about that? Like, where's a good place to start?
Yeah. Well, Mantak Chia is like the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's got books on this kind of stuff.
My wife's given me a couple of them.
I love it. He's the guy, right? So he's got the codes, and what he'd basically say for, me doing my oversimplification thing is like, it's great. It's great to make love with your wife, right? This is the best thing, right? So it's good. You make love with your wife, and as the energy builds and builds and builds, it's this creative life force is building, right? And it's like, it becomes so strong in the man that usually we need to release it. It's almost like an uncomfortable feeling. And if you look at it like, you can raise this energy up. So instead of releasing it, you just build it up. So how would you do that? Okay. You clench the buttocks and you breathe and you consciously like just sip it up. You literally bring the energy up. And what that's actually doing is it's raising the cerebral spinal fluid. It's kind of interesting that there's 33 vertebrae in the spine. Jesus lived to 33, and then it starts to go up into the brain where there's the cerebrum and, it's all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of symbology there. And, you could raise this into your pineal gland where now you're having a DMT release. It's pretty wild. Yeah. But anyway, all this to say is that's getting a little carried away, but you can raise the energy up instead of the release. We know how it goes. The energy builds. It's too much. I need to release this energy. Just pause. Goes back to the pause.
Yeah.
You tell your wife, your partner, okay, just slow down. It's getting a little, getting a little heavy here.
Yeah.
Pause, breathe. It's all in the breath.
Okay.
Breathe it up. And then it's about just slowing and extending it. And you build and build. And it's Montauk Chia would say, it's wonderful. It's amazing if the woman can, she has her releases, she has her orgasms. That's amazing. It's not for the woman not to. And actually, what ends up happening is the woman has her orgasms and it releases the Jing energy, the female energy, and the man gets to absorb that.
Okay.
So it's a win-win.
Oh.
And now it's like the man is absorbing the female energy, which is it's a good thing. His masculine energy is through the roof because he's just, he not only has he, pleased his wife in the most, romantic, beautiful way, but he's also restrained himself. He's given himself self-control, which is a fruit of the spirit. He has now self-control.
Back to not giving into the comforts.
Exactly. Not giving into, you're doing the opposite of the comfort. You're doing the uncomfortable thing is to raise it up. And now you have the most restraint. You have the most self-control. And what comes with that is like another level, unlocking a level in this game of like, yeah, I can go into temptation. I can actually, dance with this divine feminine energy to the utmost degree and make love to someone that I'm madly in love with and not give in to the temptation of the forbidden fruit, which is the release, which actually sets you back to like ground zeros in the chi game. If you're talking about this, all his energy, it brings you right back to ground zero. And then you got to build it back up, do all the things. And then it's just like this, it's the snake eating its tail is what they describe it as, it's the demiurge. So this is the opposite of that. And then this is what I would say is 99.9% of men are not doing. So now it puts you in that 0.1%.
Yeah.
And can you imagine what you're capable of doing when you're in the 1.1% of that frequency? God is like, wow, there's a vessel here that's freaking vibrating through the roof. Here you go. Like, show me what you got.
What have you found in your N=1 experiment of that creative force and energy and clarity when it broke down, when you gave in, and then you built it back up again?
Night and day. Like when I would give in, it was like, the life force was gone. It was depleted, and with that, the voice is louder. The cravings for comfort are more, I just want to eat some comfort food. I just want to, throw on the sweats and throw on the Netflix or whatever. And I'm not driven to go and create something. I'm not driven to go and like dive into my spiritual practice or my work and stuff like that. It's like, you just want to relax and that's okay. Like relaxing is great. Don't get me wrong on that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with relaxing. I'm just saying I noticed a gigantic difference in my energy. And once you really start paying attention to your energy, it changes how you show up in every aspect of your life, and especially when you have people to take care of, your energy is everything, right? And that extra little bit of, patience or love or empathy or compassion, it's all relative for me, especially. So I noticed myself being a lot less patient, a lot less empathetic. I was more defensive. And I noticed this and I was like, man, like I remember telling, I was like, I got to stop releasing. I got to just stop releasing. Like, and then we would play around with like, okay, like building the energy. And I got to see, man, like I was flying high again, like I'm flying high. I'm tapping into the divine and business deals are coming in, opportunities are coming in. I'm closing deals, this kind of stuff. And then I would also see, okay, I gave in. And then the unraveling again, and the polarity's off, and our energy's off. We're not, it was just it it was challenging, but it was also very rewarding to witness how that all works. And the East, they have this stuff. They know more about this stuff than here in the West.
Yeah.
And it's been fascinating to learn about this stuff.
Well, it just seems like what an incredible lesson to learn. And I'm thinking like what I've just gained from hearing you talk about, you lived the damn thing. And so, yeah, listen, I've talked about this stuff before, but it's been like the way you articulated it, it landed differently. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Cal. Thank you.
So now I want to get into Eons.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know it was kind of an interesting, we could say it started fucking 30 years ago, but there was you took a call.
Oh yeah.
That was very pivotal in kind of like almost like birthing this. Yeah.
Yeah.
With, I think it had to do with your gut health.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, for sure. So I was in LA and Beverly Hills, living that hedonistic lifestyle, had the business and the Range Rover and the celebrity dream crush and all this. And believe it or not, I was still unhappy, and I started getting anxiety and brain fog and early stage of depression. Mm-hmm. It's wild to think about, but that's where I was at. It was just so much pressure.
And you were taking care of yourself as far as biohacking and doing those things?
Yeah, I was doing the things.
Yeah.
I'm doing all the things. I'm working out. I'm eating clean. And but there was just something was off. Something was off. And now it makes sense. But at the time, I couldn't really figure it out. So, and one day I get a call from a shareholder and he's checking in on the business, on me. And I was just like, man, I told him the truth. I was like, dude, it was one of those days, I'm just like, you know what, man, this is how things are going. Like I'm in this weird place. I have anxiety for the first time. I don't have clarity. I can't get, my thoughts are not clear. And I don't know, man, I just feel weird. Sometimes I feel sad and depressed. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but something is off. And he's like, yeah, it sounds like you should really take care of your gut health. And I was like, gut health? I'm eating pretty clean, man, to be honest. And he's like, no. He's like, once you come to understand the relationship of, your gut and your brain and the soil and the sun and fungi, bacteria and beyond, he goes, you'll upgrade your relationship to nature and you will shift from a consumer to a co-creator in this world. And I was like, wow, okay, like tell me more. And he's like, yeah, I've been studying the gut biome for 20 years. And there's a major, major impact between, your gut brain and your mental health. And fungi plays a huge role in this. Fungi, mushrooms, they're such amazing, this is me paraphrasing now, but he's like, I got to learn basically that mushrooms are, they're innately connected to the earth. They're innately connected to nature. God created nature. It's the largest living organism. It's the oldest living organism. And a lot of research is showing it's the smartest living organism. So he basically convinced me, he's like, yeah, if you're going to align yourself with anything, this is a great way to start. And it's going to reconstruct your gut biome, which is connected to your brain, the vagus nerve. The biggest nerve goes from your gut to your brain. That's why you have gut instincts and butterflies in your stomach and all this kind of stuff. Your gut is another brain in itself. And he taught me all this. And he put me on a functional mushroom protocol for my gut health: reishi mushroom, cordyceps, lion's mane, chaga, the usual core functional mushrooms. And within a short amount of time, I had clarity again. I had clear thoughts, clear visions, and my communication got better. My relationships got better. Everything got better. And I was able to build that company, sell that company in a short amount of time. And my life just improved. And I was like, wow, that was great. And when I look back, I was like, wow, it was really the gut health thing that really got me back on track. Go figure. Huh. wow, there's really something to these mushrooms and gut health, And then, the guy was happy with the exit and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm telling you, these mushrooms, man, like these things are innately intelligent. I'm like, I know, I see that. And he's like, well, have you ever thought about going deeper into, psilocybin and psychedelics? I'm like, yeah, I'm open now for sure. Like these things are incredible. So I really started exploring that pathway and got on a psilocybin protocol. And that led to, many, many, many psychedelic experiences and all this kind of stuff. And I took that really far.
Sure. Yeah, I understand.
And that was, had a whole range of experiences there. Some very humbling, which was great. And, but yeah, it really got me into mushrooms and realizing like, yeah, these are, nature's technology. And as we get into this very advanced technological world right now, which is cool, but it's also an artificial evolution. What's happening? Like this technology is increasing its rate of growth at never before seen speeds. And the humans, these divine human children of God we're just being so reactive to this technology that it's disconnecting us from our true divine nature, connected with the creator. That's just my observation. So it's like, I believe we need to connect more with the divine, connect more with nature to balance things out. Like at least give us more balance, restore balance to the world, starting with ourselves. And I envision a world where people are more connected to themselves and the world around them. And how do we do that? Well, we connect with nature. What's the most, like I said, what's the biggest living organism in nature? It's actually the mycelium. It's the biggest. It's the oldest. It's hundreds of millions of years old. So it's absorbed consciousness for hundreds of millions of years. We're like little babies compared to this, right? So they've seen it all. They've survived ice ages, Cal. They transport nutrients and light technology all over the world to all these crops. So it's like, they're going all over the world and they're incredibly intelligent. So I just chose I'm like, okay, this is what I'm aligning with. And it's been awesome. I just keep developing more and more of a relationship with the mushrooms, which are their own kingdom too, by the way. A lot of people don't know that, but there's the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the fungi kingdom, and the mineral kingdom. Pretty cool.
Very cool.
So I keep developing my relationship with this kingdom, and they keep showing me all kinds of cool stuff, all kinds of codes. And I'm just here to get those codes and share them with the world to try to help restore balance. It's not for my own personal gain. It's really, no, I'm here to share and like, let's do this together.
What was the first step into bringing something to market with the mushrooms?
Well, first it started with like a deep relationship myself, like getting into and getting to know these things. Like I've shared with you, I fast a lot. So I'll fast for 3, 4, or 5 days and just take the mushrooms.
Damn.
And just get to know what are these things really doing to my body and what do they do? Okay. They make me way more present. We talked about that. Presence is like as close as to divinity as you could get. Like God lives in the present moment. So they make me more present. They make me more calm. They help me sleep better. They help me think better. They give me more performance, for exercising. Like they have all these amazing codes. They're rich in polysaccharides, So polysaccharides are these amazing molecules that help us absorb more nutrients, which is essentially more vitamins. What are vitamins? Vitamins are vital minerals. What are vital minerals? Well, they're really molecules of light, crystallized light. So we're absorbing more light from the creator. We're light beings, really, is what we are. Like that's my understanding is we are beings of light. So we're able to absorb more light, more nutrients. They're anti-aging, they're anti-cancerous, they're anti-inflammatory. So they're canceling out all these negative things that modern world is putting in, and they're amplifying all the good things that things are putting in. It's pretty cool. And they're created from God. Like this isn't some synthetic thing. Like this is from nature. So Anyway, it's a long way of saying it, Cal, but I get super passionate about these things, and I'm basically working for them, like there's an inside joke at our company that the mushrooms are the CEO and I'm just taking orders from them.
Yeah. You and I may have had a bit of a conversation about this, but this is something that I was kind of curious about as I was exploring psychedelics on my own and listening to obviously a lot of Joe Rogan and, Paul Stamets and Dennis McKenna, and this idea that going into a plant medicine journey, you're able to have a direct relationship with the creator, with God, with spirit. And the church back in the day recognized this and didn't love that idea because it took out them, i.e. the middleman.
Boom. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just curious about that whole idea, because I know that my own personal experience with, I've had a few deep experiences with psilocybin, with ayahuasca, and a few others. It's a quite visceral experience that everyone talks about. It's ineffable. You can't describe, we could describe it because we've been there. And so we have some of the common language, but if you've never been in that particular space, I wouldn't be able to describe it to you.
For sure.
So I just wonder, like, kind of in your exploration, what have you seen or learned about the church's kind of aversion to plant medicine and any kind of direct, like that kind of relationship with God?
It's a great question. So good. So I'll start off by saying the most divine experiences I've ever experienced came from these natural plant medicines, mushrooms from the earth. God created mushrooms. Got me. And the more I get into mushrooms, the closer they bring me to Jesus. Go figure. It's like this divine connection. It's wild, but it's true. And what does that mean? It's like, well, it makes me more present, makes me more loving, makes me more more forgiving, more discerning, more of service. These are all the things that Jesus talked about. And the mushrooms clearly bring me to that. And they help me remove blockages and remove the programming, and they remove the sins and all this kind of stuff. They get me to look at it, face it, and be like, yeah, I don't want to give my attention to these, programs, these sinful energies. So there's that part about it. And this is the interesting thing that I noticed about the church was they would constantly, they would say like, oh yeah, like all this stuff, like astrology, psychedelics, tarot cards, psychics, all this stuff is dark energy. It's dark, and to stay away from this, and it's evil and it's dark. And it's like, okay, sure. But what they're really doing in that is like they're promoting fear around that. Right?
Yeah.
And that's not cool for me. Is like, it's one thing to be cautious about this kind of stuff, because okay, maybe in those things you are tapping into the spiritual world. Okay, let's explore that. The spiritual world is real for sure. We know this. In the spiritual world, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Yes.
Good, bad, up, down, left, right, all the things.
Yeah.
This is one thing I will tell you which is the paradox of what they're doing is like, in my experience, and I'm sure a lot of, fellow facilitators and practitioners will back this up, is that the worst thing one can do in going into the spiritual world is have any kind of fear-based energy, fear-based mentality, like all the dark things that have ever happened to me in the spiritual world was because I had fear going in. So it's like they're promoting fear and saying, don't go into those things because it's all dark and stuff. But I'm telling you, if you go in there with love and you go in there with light and you go in there with Jesus and you say, hey, Yeshua, I'm going into this thing, protect me. This guy is the utmost guardian, sacred protector. He will come and protect you. And I'm telling you this as well, is like you go into these realms. I've, done hundreds of, plant medicine and psychonautic journeys, literally hundreds. And when you go in there with love and light, these dark entities or forces or whatever, they want nothing to do with you. They see your love and your light coming and they're like, oh my God, get away from me, because you shine on them and they want nothing to do with you. They stay so far away from you, and you could literally go in there and like evaporate these entities. And that's kind of like fun for me now, is to go into these realms with the power of Yeshua, with Archangel Michael, with Moses, and call on these spirits. And like, you're shining light on these things, and you could go into all kinds of different rooms and realms and palaces and all this crazy cool stuff. It's the most amazing thing.
Well, you got me excited because I've gone in, I've kind of run free balling it.
Of course.
You know? And so now I've got all the more reason to develop a relationship with Jesus and his boys and women, like there's
Mary.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You're onto it. And that's what I did for a long time too. It's just free balling. But it's like, once you really get into these spiritual realms, and, I've done a bunch of research on this. Aubrey Marcus talks a lot about this as well. Had some amazing guests on his podcast, where there's a spiritual hierarchy going on. Like there's Archangel Michael is there, and he's the ultimate like protector, and Jesus is there with them. Like these guys are, they are looking after these spiritual realms, and it's beyond words what's going on up there. Like it's almost impossible to articulate what is happening, but I can, bring it down to simplification. And this is like, there's nothing to be afraid of except for fear itself. So when they go, like, fear is just, it's dark, it's false energy, it's false evidence appearing real. So you're just deluding yourself to lower your energy and lower your frequency, so that these energies can now latch onto that, because like attracts like. So it's like, for them to say all this stuff is dark and all this kind of stuff, one, I could pretty much almost bet anything that none of them have actually went into these realms. They don't partake in these things. They're scared of them. So how can you really understand something that you're afraid of? You have no experience in there. So who are you to really speak on it? You're just saying fear. Oh no, it's dark. It's this, it's that. Well, if you go back, this is the funny thing. You go back you go look at all these ancient churches and these ancient artworks around Christianity and the church and all this, you're going to find sacred mushrooms in so many artworks and things and plants and burning bushes. And, there's a controversial book that was banned by the Catholic Church called Sacred Mushrooms and the Cross.
I was going to ask you about it. I couldn't think of the title, but as we started talking about this, I have the book. It's dense. I haven't read it. Yeah. Like John Allegro, is that the author?
John Allegro, yeah. Great memory. John Allegro. And this is a controversial book. I'm not saying I believe, this is not my theology, but this is the guy that studied, the Dead Sea Scrolls more than almost anybody.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, he spent 7 years or at least studying these things day in and day out. And this guy's, he's a master theologist. He knows Hebrew, he knows Aramaic, he knows Greek. And
just for context, can you give like a kind of broad strokes Dead Sea Scrolls 101?
Yeah, so broad stroke Dead Sea Scrolls 101 is they found these scrolls in the Dead Sea, these caves, and they date them back to being the most ancient text there is, the ancient text of the original Bible, period. And they say, like, these are the closest thing that we have to the original texts. And, the Catholic Church got their hands on them and put them aside and like didn't release them to the public for a long time. There's some weird stuff going on there. And then they finally allowed, public outcry and stuff like that. They finally started allowing some of their, most trusted theologians to go and study these scrolls, to give the public like, hey, what's going on with these things? We want to know how close this is to the actual Bible.
Okay.
Here comes John Marco Allegro. And once again, I just want to say, like, This is just the story. This is not what I'm saying is absolute truth or anything like that. This is just the story. Look into it for yourself. This guy studies the Dead Sea Scrolls probably more than anybody, 7 or 8 years in a row. What does he find out? Jesus and all his boys are doing mushrooms. Maybe even beyond that. This guy's even saying Jesus might be a mushroom. It's wild.
Oh.
And it's like
I see.
yeah. And it's like Jesus he's basically saying this is wild, but he's saying like Christ consciousness is in the mushroom. You take the mushroom, you become like the spirit of Yeshua. And there's so many different things that are symbolic with this, like this mushroom, you know, you leave it out in the sun for 3 days, it rises. There's a symbology there, like Jesus. You know, there's so many things. And then this mushroom ends up...
Was it a particular version of the mushroom? Was it the...
Amanita muscaria.
Okay.
Yeah, the most iconic mushroom ever. I'm sure everybody's seen it. It's the emoji in our phones. It's the story of Santa Claus, which is related to Christmas, Jesus's birthday. There's so many things. Shamans used to use it. And, you know, yeah, it's just so much history and folklore there. So there's obviously something deep going on with this mushroom. And, you know, I'm not saying that Jesus was a mushroom. I'm just saying that this guy studied Dead Sea Scrolls more than anybody. And he's saying there's a deep, deep connection between Christianity and this mushroom. So it's like when the church is saying, oh yeah, don't do the mushrooms and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, the Dead Sea Scrolls is saying there's definitely something going on here with this mushroom. It's in all your artwork. It's in all this artwork through, you know, all other religions as well, like Hinduism and Buddhism. The monks are doing LSD, which is a form of mushroom. Fungi, ergot.
Really?
Yeah, most people don't know, but LSD, pure LSD is from ergot, which is a fungus, which is the mushroom.
That's right.
So you keep, you know, there's way too many threads here going back. And like we started this thing, Cal, all this stuff was created by God anyway. Like, so why would God create the mushroom, the plants, the ayahuasca, and then people take them? Everybody says you're having spiritual experiences. You know, spirit is of God. I'm having a hard time like finding like what's the disconnect, or like, no, don't go there. And then one could say, okay, yeah, you don't know what's going on in these realms, right? There's a lot of entities. There's a lot of darkness. I agree with that. It's not a amusement park to just go and play around with it. It takes discernment. It takes reverence. It takes some knowledge, and it takes, you know, being close with God, Yeshua, Archangel Michael, whoever your archetype is, to just hold that love and that light within you and know that you have the power to shine on whatever darkness is out there, and lightness will always overcome the dark. But you have to be that. You go into these realms with fear, anxiety, you know, all these. Yeah, you're playing with fire, I would say. So it's fair to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've definitely had that experience when I've gone in with a bit of fear. I first time I did 5-MeO, I done my research on it, and they said, you know, no one's ever had any like issues with it unless they had a MAO inhibitor.
Oh.
It's like, all right, perfect.
What is an MAO inhibitor again?
Well, that's what I wasn't exactly sure about, but I didn't assume we were going to be taking anything prior to doing it. I think there's a way you can do that, and it can amplify whatever. And so we're about to do it. And the facilitator hands around, we do a bag, volcano, tobacco, He goes, this is an MAO inhibitor.
Oh, shit.
And I literally like had to go take a shit because it was like the adrenaline just hit. And so I go into this experience fucking nervous.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't the type of MAO inhibitor there was. I mean, that's pretty mild, but
still.
I had a really challenging experience. Yeah, it finally broke through after about 2 minutes, but those were the longest 2 minutes of my life.
I bet.
Until I did ayahuasca. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's for another podcast.
Yeah.
So now I guess I'd say there's a loophole kind of in the mushroom market.
Yeah, kind of.
Would you say that? Is that fair to say?
No, I'd say it's like it's a clever way to say it. Is there's I'd say
there's a way to bring, because mushrooms, as we know them, psilocybin, I should say, psilocybin is legal in a few states, but largely it's illegal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so when I met you, you were sharing that, you've had this product and it's, you can microdose mushrooms. And I'm like, well, how do you get around the, selling it? You're like, it's legal.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
And so please, I'm so fascinated by not only what you've created, but then obviously we'll get into the delivery system, which is just a whole nother, kind of rabbit hole to explore. But, how did you understand the Amanita to be in that special class? And then what was your experience? Had you played around with that at all in your experiences, or was it all psilocybin?
It was all psilocybin and other psychedelics. You name it, I'd probably have experimented with it and journeyed and ceremonied. I hadn't had any experience with the Amanita prior to when it was introduced to me. The wild thing was, and this is going to sound crazy or however it sounds, but it was really the mushrooms showed me Amanita. I was in a sound bath, experiment or an experience, the crystal bowls and all this kind of stuff. I'm in total
on medicine, or
I was on psilocybin.
Yep.
I was on psilocybin and I'm in this sound bath and I'm in La La Land, I'm totally transcending. And I'm in this other dimension. And literally I start getting these images of the Amanita. I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's like Super Mario Brothers type stuff, And I look at this Earth game a lot sometimes, like in my own worldview as like a video game sometimes, Sometimes I see it kind of like a simulation. Sometimes I see it like God's creation simulation mode. But I always try to gamify things to make it fun. I think it's like a school. I think like this is like an Earth school that we're in. And just like I did when I was in school, I turned school into like a game.
Don't take it too seriously.
Don't take it too seriously. Make it fun. Join forces with people and make teams and like make it fun. Make it a game. Why not? So when I saw it as like, it was like a video game and this Amanita was presented to me, I was like, wow, I wonder what this is all about. I'm like, interesting. I don't know much about this mushroom, but I've seen it. It's so weird, so it got me. It got into my psyche. And then I was like, oh, I got to research this mushroom. Started researching, came across the book, Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. And here I'm following Jesus. And this book is all about Jesus and this mushroom. I'm like, wow, what the heck is that about?
Wow.
This is wild. I start reading the book. It's great. And further and further. And then I'm like, this mushroom is legal and it's psychedelic. I'm like, wow, this is wild. So now I get all these ideas. I'm like, man, I'm going to bring this mushroom out to market. Like this is cool. And, I had good intentions to do so. I started realizing this mushroom, it helps with anxiety, it helps with addiction, it helps with PTSD, helps counteract fear. I'm like, this is phenomenal.
Geez, it kind of covers everything.
Right.
Just about, yeah.
I know, especially the fear part. I'm like, imagine a world with no fear. I'm like, I'm starting to like get so excited. I'm like, this is incredible. And the more I start reading about it, it's like, goes back to so many things we talked about, Cal, which is so cool. But it's like, it actually deprograms the user. Like it starts to show you your own programs. And then you get to look at them and be like, huh. And like, this is how I use this mushroom to like deprogram myself from food and sex and material goods. It was this mushroom that helped me do it. I didn't do it on my own.
It's so interesting because I'm about a month in to using it, and I'm like waking up to these, and I've seen them before, but I was offline for the last 6 months with regards to this. So it's interesting to hear this.
Yeah. It's psychedelic. And what does that mean, right? Everybody heard the word psychedelic and they have their own connotations, hippies and stuff like that. Psychedelic just means, if you look up the actual definition of the word, it means soul revealing. It's revealing stuff to you on a soul level. So simple. And that's what it does. This mushroom just reveals things to you on a soul level. You're not going to have some hallucinogenic trip. You're not going to start seeing, purple elephants or whatever. Like, no, it's just going to start revealing things to you. It's going to start to communicate with you on a soul level. And it does it very gently because it knows what you need on a soul level. It's very cool. This mushroom has been around for literally a long, long time. And it has all these sacred connections to it for a reason, and that has nothing to do with me. I'm just stewarding. I'm just the one that's trying to bring this mushroom out to the world. The mushroom actually has the power. So yeah, that's what it showed me. But the interesting thing was I had the idea to bring this mushroom to the market, good intentions. I want to help people. The mushroom was like, yeah, no, you're not ready to bring this to market. And it basically...
What time frame? Where are we?
This is 2 years ago. This is in 2022 when I had the idea.
Wow.
Yeah, over 2 years ago now. November 2022, I got the idea in the sound bath. Boom. And I'm like so excited. Got the new idea. Amanita. It's legal. Helps people. Let's go. Oh my God. The emotional obstacle course that this mushroom put me through to like look at my own stuff and do the inner work on myself and, let go of certain people in my life and embrace other people into my life and really get out of my own way was incredible. And it was challenging and it was full of obstacles and hurdles and all this stuff. It was like such a spiritual journey, but who I became in the process was awesome. And then the mushroom decided when it was ready to come out. And it was, coincidentally at the same time when I had cleared all these blockages out of myself, that I didn't really know that I had, but it got me to look at them. And, sometimes I didn't want to face them. Sometimes I didn't want to let go of these addictions, but got me to stop drinking alcohol, got to stop eating certain foods, got me to stop having, frivolous sex. And it got me to really dive in with my relationship with Jesus, Yeshua, which has been awesome. And it cleared out a lot of people in our company as well. Like a lot of people weren't on the same vibe. And that was a whole thing as well. A lot of challenging things there. But now where we're at, like, I feel so clear. I feel like the foundation of our company is awesome. And we're tight, we're solid. We've been through battles together and, we're ready to we are bringing this product to market. We've already brought it to market, but we're ready to show people, the impact that this mushroom truly can make on anxiety, on addiction, on PTSD, on removing people's fear-based programming, which is so huge, especially in today's world. And we're just going to let the data speak for itself. Yes, we'll have many testimonies from people coming out because the mushroom is working through people all the time, which is a big part of it. But I'm also really excited for that and excited for the data just to come out and people be like, wow, this thing, gets rid of anxiety. Like it's huge. Like anxiety medication's an $18 billion market in the United States alone. And these medications, yeah, sometimes they could be really helpful. But also sometimes they can really mess up someone's gut biome. They can mess up their neurotransmitters in their brain, and it just starts putting them down another spiral. And I know that's controversial, and big pharma's probably not going to like that. But let's just let the data speak for itself. It's legal, and now we got RFK here, in office and all this stuff, and it's awesome. So I'm really, really, I'm excited to see what this mushroom has in store.
It is different in the sense of, you take a typical golden teach or whatever, you dry it, grind it up, then you kind of throw it in a capsule. Yeah. That's not how the Amanita is prepared, correct?
Correct. That's a really
In fact, I have heard there's some challenges with toxicity eating it raw, or what are the, because I don't want anyone to just go out there and try to do this on their own.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like a lot of mushrooms, if you went and ate the mushroom raw, you're going to feel some, side effects. A lot of mushrooms, you're not supposed to just eat them raw.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them, you're supposed to let them dry. A lot of them, you're supposed to heat them up, bake them, put them in a tea. A lot of them, you need some sort of heating component to it. And that's because they have active ingredients in them that lets you know, like, you're not supposed to eat this mushroom raw, because then, animals and people would just be eating them. And it's not meant for that. It's a medicine. It's a sacred medicine. There's mushrooms that are food, like portobello and shiitake and stuff like that. Those are like edible, food-based mushrooms. Then there's functional mushrooms like the cordyceps, the reishi, and chaga. And then there's the psychedelic mushrooms, and the psychedelic mushrooms are meant to be taken usually in a protocol or with some reverence. So to answer your question, it's like, this mushroom raw, you're going to get some toxicity. You're going to get nauseous. It's not meant to be taken that way. But when you heat it up, you put it in a tea, or you heat it up, sonification, or extract it, it converts the toxic ingredient, which is ibotenic acid. It converts it to, with the muscarine that's in it. When it's heated, they combine into this active ingredient called muscimol. And muscimol is the active ingredient that works on the GABA receptor of the brain. The GABA receptor of the brain is the same receptor that modulates anxiety and addiction and PTSD and fear. And this is the same receptor. We're all very familiar with this receptor. It's the same receptor that alcohol works on. So when you have those first couple sips of wine or beer or whatever, you start to feel loose, and you start to feel,
the anxiety
goes down.
Oh, yeah.
But what happens with alcohol is it has a bunch of other side effects. So this is working on that same receptor. That's why when the user takes this, they're going to just feel this wave of calmness. And that's partially because we have the delivery that we'll get into, which is a key component. So it's not just the molecule. The molecule is great, but how we're able to deliver it, it creates a wonderful user experience. And this is what we wanted, being the stewards of this mushroom is like, we got to get this right. Like there's a responsibility here. Like we're trying to change the pathway of mental health. So let's make a really good user experience. So when people try this, they're like, this is great. I went from feeling like this, went from feeling anxious or fear to feeling relaxed. And that for me, Cal, is like what it's all about, is just relaxing. We've talked about this, because the more one can relax, usually make better decisions, not just for yourself, but for your loved ones and stuff like that. And you could let things go. You could not be so one could be not so reactive. And that, it's so cool. That goes back to how we started this conversation, is like reactivity for me is really the enemy. It's like, no, just allow, breathe, tap into God's speed. God goes slow, but it's persistent, never stops. And once you tap into that, you're on God's speed. You're not on your own speed, which is like this reactivity mode, which is the left brain. You start tapping into that divine mind, which is God's speed. And that's my mission, is to get people onto God's speed, and we're relaxed. And when you're relaxed, you really have faith. When a person that's in faith is really relaxed, because that God is in control.
Yeah.
So and I think a lot of people, myself included, for a really long time, just weren't able to relax. It's
Mm-mm.
like go, survival. I need this, get this. What about this? What if I lose this? And it's like, no,
Mhm.
slow down, pause, relax. And this mushroom really, really helps with that.
And you had mentioned, so it hits on the GABA receptors, which is different than where psilocybin
Correct.
kind of interacts with the brain. And so, what is that area, and what are those kind of the characteristics of that experience for people?
Correct. Yeah. So psilocybin works on the serotonin receptor of the brain. So it's more so like depression, happiness, sadness, and it tops that receptor up. So you don't feel as depressed. Simple as that, and that's great. It's awesome. Psilocybin's incredible. I love it. I'm microdosing psilocybin right now, but I also stack it with the dialed.
That's what I was going to ask you. So, because they hit two different receptors, so those things can coexist.
Coexist. You're stacking, you're taking care of both receptors. I believe these mushrooms used together is the best. It's the ultimate.
Okay.
Symbiotic. You can use both, like it depends what you're going to achieve.
Yeah.
I mean, I like feeling happy and I like being calm.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Who doesn't want to feel like that, right? So, and I get it. Psilocybin is not legal. So I'm using the data and the science and building the safety and trust and credibility around the Amanita to show people in the mainstream that, hey, microdosing is safe. It's here. You're not going to have this crazy trip out experience here. It's a microdose. It's calming. So we build the trust so that we can usher in psilocybin as well. Psilocybin deserves to be legal as well, just in moderation. And in microdosing, I'm not saying to bring out like crazy hero doses or anything like that. I'm saying, no, it's a mental health thing. So with that, we need to, kind of pave the way. And I'm really hoping, RFK, if you're listening, like we could definitely use your help. And I love you. You're an amazing guy. And that's part of our initiative is to help build safety and trust around mushrooms to help with mental health specifically.
And then you had shared with me that it's an everyday dosage, and then 3 to 4 weeks in, you should start to notice. Which again, it's right on schedule for me. Like it's been super gentle in that. Like I've resisted it, like getting to face the things that it's wanting me to face, and then I feel like today was like this morning was the day that I turned towards those things.
Nice.
It has been about a month.
Cool. Yeah.
But to your point, it's different than psilocybin. Like I don't feel like I'm turned up a notch with my creativity and like I would on a psilocybin microdose.
Sure. Yeah. Psilocybin's a little more intrusive.
Yeah.
A little more abrasive. Like it's like, hey, I'm going to show you what's going on.
Yeah.
This one's a little more gentle and it meets you where you're at. It knows what to do. It's intelligent in that sense. And it meets you where you're at. And yeah, it gets you to the place where you're ready to realize it yourself, like you're realizing it. Like you just came to these conclusions on your own. You got to this realization. And what it's doing in this 3 to 4 week period is it's helping you reset your circadian rhythm. It's getting you more aligned to the sun, the light of the creator.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty awesome. It's going to start making you want to go to bed earlier, get up earlier, like the sun. You want to get up with the sun, go to bed with the sun. And what's that doing? It's resetting your circadian rhythm. It's bringing you closer to nature. It's bringing you closer to rhythm with the flow of life.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're in that flow of life, you're less resistant, you're less reactive. And then it's like, okay, now maybe you're ready to work on some things that have been maybe getting in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's not going to force you like psilocybin. It's just different. It's like a different uncle, It's like the more gentle uncle of the family. And he's like, hey, you want to look at this with me? No? Okay, maybe later. We'll get to that. We'll get some rest first, Go get a good nap in or something. Yeah. It's just gentle like that. It's got a good sense of humor, this mushroom too. It's pretty wild, man. But it's hard to explain for people that don't get it. But to try to like simplify it is like this mushroom has been around for a long, long time. It's seen more than you can imagine. And it's somehow made itself legal in today's world because it knows that it's here to play a role in whatever we're going through. And these mushrooms are here to help. They really are. They're their own kingdom. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out.
Well, let's talk about I want to talk about the other products as well, but I definitely want to talk about the QuickZone technology. So whichever one you want to dive into.
Yeah.
Either the products or the tech.
I'll go into the products quickly and then we'll come back to the tech because the tech is really the star of the show. Like the products are all there to help you solve the modern day issues that we deal with caused by modernity, caused by technology. So you need a good night's sleep, right? It all starts with a good night's sleep. If you don't have a good night's sleep, it's hard to show up and be, the man or woman that you're desiring to be. So we focused on sleep. We took a long time to come out with that formula. But yeah, the sleep gummies are awesome. People love them. They taste great. They work. They put you in REM sleep where you have lucid dreams and, you get to experience more things in the lucid dreams, which is pretty cool. There's the gut health capsules, which is, what got me started on functional mushrooms.
Yeah.
It's a stacked formula full of extract, so they're way more potent than regular powders. There's the Smart Mushroom Coffee, which was a smarter way to drink coffee. It's loaded with adaptogens and nootropics and vitamins and minerals to counterbalance the negative effects of just a regular cup of coffee, which, most coffee or 50% of coffee in the United States has mold in it. So that's another thing. So we triple test for mold. It's very clean coffee. It's Colombian espresso. And that's for productivity, people that want to just have the energy throughout the day to keep going. And and I didn't want to take away people's coffee. So we kept people's coffee in there combined with the mushrooms.
Well, I think I was sharing with you maybe last week, but I've been on decaf for probably about 4 months. And then you sent me this amazing package of all these great goodies. And I just tried it. And it was like a super gentle, like I didn't feel this spike. I didn't feel any kind of jitters. I think, that again, the coffee with the mushroom, that
helps.
That tandem was really tolerable because for me, I can get into that wake up in that deficit, need it again, right?
Yeah.
And I never really felt that. So that has been a great experience. And I was sharing with you that the sleep ones you have, the gummies, again, they taste awesome. It almost feels like I'm cheating.
Yeah.
But then what is it? The QuickZone.
Yeah, the QuickZone.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, up the thing you're showing to me. So how does the sleep gummy and the QuickZone deeper sleep, how are those different?
Yeah.
And again, I've been a few days off any indica, and last night I got to bed probably got into bed around 10 or so, and I was dicking around a little bit, but got to sleep by 10:30. And it's the first morning I've woken up and not felt like I need like another hour of sleep. And I woke up at like 6 or so, and I was like, whoa, I actually feel okay. Got up and I had some really cool, like somewhat wild but vivid dreams, which it's been a minute since I've had those. So that felt really good to kind of be in that and try to take away whatever those messages were. But
yeah,
what is the difference between the two, and how do you recommend dosing them? And
yeah, I love that. I love the dream aspect. I love hearing that from people because
so cool.
Yeah.
People I hadn't thought about in a while, and just like this guy was showing up as his wife, but it was him, but it was fucking cool.
Yeah. Showing you stuff there, it's like,
yeah,
I know. It's cool. Subconscious coming into play. I love hearing that. So the gummies was one of our first products. It was our first product after the coffee. And it was strategically like, okay, how do we introduce the brand to people? This is going back a few years where people were a little more skeptical about mushrooms, a little more fearful. They hear mushrooms, they think psychedelic, they think psilocybin, they think this kind of stuff. So I was like, here, it's just a gummy, it tastes great. It's going to help you sleep. You might have some wild dreams, but it's good for you, So it was our way to like introduce slowly into the market to build trust. People are like, yeah, I take the gummies. I feel great. I have great dreams. I wake up, I'm rested. Wonderful. And then with the intentions of like always optimizing and perfecting and getting better, we realized that, it's not just about giving people the molecules or the active ingredients. It's about how you deliver them, and this is for me personally, it's like it's an analogy or a metaphor that I keep going back to just in life in general. Like, you could have the information or you could have the code or you could have the knowledge, but how you deliver it to someone is just as important as the knowledge itself. As in this case, we know we have the active ingredient, we have the molecule, but it's like, how can we deliver it to the human vessel in the best way that we can? And we realized that it's all about bioavailability. It's not what you can give someone, but it's how they absorb it that really matters. So we went out and we got 14 patents on bioavailability to make the molecules, the active ingredients, very absorbable by the human body. So you take it and it absorbs in your cells and then you feel it. You have this validation experience very quickly. So it's like, oh, I was feeling like this. Now I'm feeling like this very quickly. And we believe in supplementation, this is the future. Like there's a lot of supplements out there. It's one of the biggest industries ever. But they're using this old delivery technology of capsules or even in gummies, and when you do that, it goes through your digestive tract and you end up losing a lot of it to your GI through your liver. Your liver has to process it and you have to overdose on the active ingredient to actually get what you're looking for. So we're like, okay, what if we could change that? And that's what we did with the Quicksome. So we're able to, it's a simplified way of saying, but we have the technology. So you put this this dissolvable tablet in your mouth. It melts under your tongue sublingually, travels through the mucosal system and into your bloodstream within a minute. So it's breaking the blood-brain barrier and it's getting in there no matter what your fatigue level is at or what you ate that day or your, body fat percentage, like all these other factors that play a factor when you're taking other forms of supplementation. This is just, it's right into your bloodstream. So you're getting all the active ingredient that you're paying for. And we're doing that with a lot less active ingredient. So it's a great business model for us.
Yeah.
But for the user, they're getting the full experience and they're getting it fast and they're getting it precise. And when it comes to now psychedelics, which is the new level that we're entering, I believe it's very important to have precise dosing.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And a quick onset. So it's like, because you know how it is in psychedelics where you take the thing and you're like, hey, it's not hitting yet.
Oh, no.
Take more, right? We've all been there.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, this one, you're going to feel it really quickly. And there's not going to be hallucinogenic effect, but you want to have that state change, especially when you're in anxiety or fear and you're like, no, I don't have this capacity right now to be in anxiety or fear. Like I got to take care of someone or this or that. Like this gets you out of fear really quickly. And that's great, because we're constantly being bombarded by things to be afraid about. And I'm just aware of that. So it's like, no, here's a natural way to shift from fear into the right side of your mind. And the right side of your mind is really about creativity, intuition, your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are beautiful, beautiful gifts that we've been given as part of our mind. And, the way society is designed, like we're constantly using the other side of our brain, which is about me and fear and uncertainty and doubt and survival. And it's like, you know what? We've played that game enough.
Yeah.
Let's play a new game. And this is what the mushroom is helping. And the Quicksome helps with that.
Origin story on the name. You shared it with me, but I think it's Beautiful.
Yeah, I was in a mushroom ceremony.
Yeah.
And just, surrendering and playing around with the names and asking the mushrooms, like, what do you want to be called? What do you want this company to be like? We had already the idea for the company, and we were there, we were playing around, and we literally just surrendered to the mushrooms and be like, hey, we're stewards here. This is my business partner Jeff and I. We're like, yeah, like show us the way here. Give us the light. Like we're just like vessels, and we want to just use the light to share with people. So share with us. And the name Eons came up, it was like clear as day. And it was like, yeah, Eons is the longest period of time. There's centuries and there's millennials and there's epochs and eras. And then there's eons. It's the longest period of time that there is, hundreds of millions of years. And mushrooms have been around for eons. It's the closest thing to infinity. When the universe pulses every so often, hundreds of millions of years, there's a pulse in the universe, and they call that an eon. So it was like, yeah, that's freaking rad, dude. So we went out and created a brand around that to be the most iconic mushroom brand. Like that's my goal, Cal, is like one day I want people to think of mushrooms, they think of Eons. And what does that mean? Well, it means we've impacted millions of lives by bringing them closer to nature, which is their true essence, So, and we needed a strong name to have that, and yeah, so that's Eons.
Awesome. So, where can people find this?
Eons.com.
Oh, it's that simple. And you said the site was available?
Somehow it was available. It wasn't cheap, but we got it.
Yeah. Okay. Heck yeah. I wanted to, unless there was anything else we should cover there.
No, that's great. That's the lineup. Dialed is the new hero product with the psychedelic, and the feedback we're getting is phenomenal. But no, thank you. I appreciate you focusing on that stuff.
And you had shared with me again, like it's not like a psilocybin microdose where it's maybe 3 on, 1 off, 3. It's every day.
You could take it every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
It releases out of your system when you sweat. So the compound will keep stacking in your system until you sweat it out. So that's kind of interesting part about it. And that's, after 3 weeks of use, it'll reset your circadian rhythm, which is a key component to it. And then after that, it gets on a more soul revealing level. Yeah.
Benefits to taking more than one? Like, why would someone take 2 or 3, or what's that?
Yeah.
What's the sense around that?
That's a great question. Well, one is you're binding your receptor together. So it's like you're just binding it together more and more and more. So when the receptor is binded together, there's less fragility for these impulses, these thoughts, these negative thoughts, or these, fear-based thoughts, to really play a factor on the receptor of the brain that's modulating this stuff. So you're just doing more and more repairs to it, like think of it like trying to think like a pipe or something, where you're just constantly putting layers around the pipe. So now there's not going to be a leak out of the pipe or something like that. Or somebody's not going to break the pipe. So you're just doing more reparations on your receptors, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
Eventually you become impenetrable to the fear-based thinking. Pretty awesome.
I wouldn't mind that. Even just like somewhat impenetrable,
Somewhat impenetrable. Yeah. Giving yourself a chance with what's going on in the world. Like there's so much going on, right? So yeah.
I've noticed when I put it under my tongue, like what is, like sometimes I feel like, oh, did I swallow like too much, too fast? Should you hold that under there for 30 seconds, a minute? Like what's the recommended, like?
I do the same thing.
Yeah. Like, fuck, should I do another one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. But yeah, ideally hold it under your tongue, let it absorb sublingually. Yep. And that's the best way to do it. You still get in your cheeks and stuff. It's still the same kind of delivery, but yeah, try not to swallow it. But yeah, absorbing in your mouth the best you can.
Okay. Back to the sleep. The deeper sleep, so that's the quick zone.
Yeah.
would you, if you took a couple of those, like what's the difference between taking one to, like, is there a reason to take 3 of those?
The cool thing with the Quicksome is that it's a really small dose of the active ingredient. There's like 1.4 milligrams, of melatonin. There's 7 milligrams of reishi. It's just the way that it's delivered. So it's going right into your bloodstream. They're perfect if like you wake up in the middle of the night and you got to go pee or something and you want to fall back asleep quickly. You don't want to like overload with the gummy, which is more of a stronger dose. And yeah, you could take 2 or 3. The cool thing is, or you could just take 1. Depends on, where you're at, your stimulus, like how much blue light you've taken in before bed and stuff. I know you wear the blue light blockers as well.
Yeah.
So these are all factors, that people should be in consideration. But the cool thing about the deeper sleep that we really, really love about it is that you're not taking that much melatonin. Like,
yeah, great.
It's a super low dose of melatonin. Like we're saying 1.4 milligrams, So, but it's doing what it needs to do because of the way it's delivered. Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening, other people, and they're like, oh, I can't handle melatonin. I wake up so groggy. Yeah, it's because the way that you're delivering it to yourself is it's going through your gut. So it's taking hours to be absorbed. So now it's only really kicking in at 4 a.m. And now you're trying to wake up at 7 or whatever in the morning. And it's like the melatonin is still very prevalent. Yeah. This is like you take it at 11 or 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 9:05. It's in your bloodstream. Yeah. So, yeah.
And then with the gut health and clarity, empty stomach, does it matter? What are your thoughts around that?
Either way, like I think empty stomach's better, but it does help. There's digestive enzymes in a lot of these mushrooms. So it helps digest stuff as well, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the gut health one is key. There's just so many benefits, as I'm sure, with gut health and clarity. And yeah, these things really help rebuild your gut biome, which is it's a big part of it.
Well, I just have gone through this deep ass journey on clearing out. I had 3 parasites. I had 2 different bacteria that were gnarly, and I've had a fucking boatload of candida.
Wow.
So I've gone through this whole protocol of drinking these African juices, which are amazing and are the worst tasting things I guarantee you've ever tasted. Wow. And so I cleared, in the first go around, I was able to clear all the parasites and the bacteria and the candida, which they do it on a range of 1 to 5, 5 being abundant. I had a 5, and then I had 3 asterisks, which means multiplied times. So like a lot. Wow. And so after the first round, I got down to 5 with 1 asterisk, and I just finished. So all this to say that once that gets sorted out, I'm excited to introduce that into kind of reseeding the gut.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Have you had any testing done with your gut with that stuff?
I haven't in a while, like not going like several years.
Yeah.
So no, it'd be interesting. Like, as I shared with you last time we were hanging out, like I'm into this whole ivermectin thing, which is pretty interesting. So this is like the next lane that I'm diving into, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But so I take ivermectin periodically.
Okay.
And also realizing that it is damaging to my gut health. And I notice the difference when I take ivermectin, and then I notice the shift because I'm very clear, I fast, all this kind of stuff. So I'm very excited. It's honestly something I'm very excited about. I shared with you, were one of the first person I shared with, Cal, was like bringing this new solubilized or injectable version of ivermectin to market for exactly these reasons, to kill parasites and to oncology and cancer treatment. Like this is a whole new wave of possibility that I'm super, super excited about. Super fortunate to be able to bring these technologies to the world. And I'm just stoked.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you a bit about cannabis and just what you had shared with me. And I've talked to other people who are pretty steeped in cannabis, and they've just shared just in general that the plant has just changed because for obvious reasons people want something stronger, and so they just come to the market with these things that have a ton. They've been kind of bastardized in some ways. And then what you had shared with me is something that I was completely ignorant towards. So I'd love just to kind of educate people a little bit about, what maybe the current state of cannabis is. And
sure. Yeah, no. Okay. So most people, like I shared a bit earlier, like I have a long history with cannabis, or had one for sure. I have a lot of gratitude towards cannabis. It played a big part of my life for a long time, off and on when I was in the aviation industry. It was very frowned upon in the aviation industry.
Did they test for that?
At certain times they did. And that's what I'd have to take breaks and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And that was okay. I was always good at taking breaks. And then there was a time where I wasn't smoking cannabis for a long time. That was great. I had the clarity. It was awesome. And I remember those, chapters of having super clarity, and it was incredible. And I would say this to any young man listening is like, when you have clarity and confidence and you combine those two things, like you really can gain a lot of momentum, especially when you're trying to build something. And that's when going off cannabis was very, very helpful for me. And then, it was my thing. It was my coping mechanism. It was my crutch to not face certain feelings about myself, mother wound that I had, and, the trying to get things from the world, that I felt I didn't have within myself, which was false.
Mm-hmm.
And cannabis would fill that. I wouldn't have to feel those feelings. I could just smoke some weed. And it became that crutch for a long time. And it served its purpose in that sense, and it enabled me. I used that crutch to get through. But and then my mom, used cannabis oil to help her with her cancer treatment. So I was like, wow, this is a great medicine, and I saw the power for that. And I was like, wow, I want to bring this more to the world in a medical state. And that was my driver. I was like, this can really help people. And my friends and I were, getting people cannabis oil that were on cancer and all this kind of stuff. And it felt really good. Rick Simpson oil, all this cool stuff. So I was like, man, this is a great medicine. And then we had the big vision to create a big cannabis company, and that was great. And in creating a big cannabis company with big brands and big genetics and, getting all the best genetics from around the world and stuff like that, it was great. It was a fun adventure, and doing all this stuff. It was cool. Met so many people. But in that, I got to realize, like, one, the plant is being continually genetically modified from its original intention of like how God brought it into this world. Like, it's very different from the weed our parents used to smoke, back in the day. It's changed a lot, like back then it was like, I think they would say it was like 3, 4, maybe 5% THC.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. Now we're like 25%. I'm hearing 30% THC. Like it's almost 10x. It's a big difference,
Wow.
It's a big difference. So there's that, and then so it's like, okay, look at the why then. Like, okay, back then they'd smoke weed, relax, whatever, listen to music. And then now I think the why is to just like escape.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's escapism. And it's like, just get as high as you possibly can to not face whatever it is it's uncomfortable, and I admit that I used to do the same thing. So I get it. There's no judgment there. I did this for many, many years. And when I finally faced the things, that I was avoiding, those uncomfortable feelings, you face them and you embrace that uncomfortable feeling, you embrace the pain. I'm telling you, like, there's so much freedom on the other side of that. and freedom is golden, and you start to access these new possibilities in your life. So I just got the full experience of cannabis to the point where I went out and created one of the largest cannabis companies in the world. So I get it. I was into it. And then I realized, wow, this is not what maybe I thought it was. And maybe it's not doing the things that I wanted it to do anymore. And that's kind of why I removed myself from the situation. And, no judgment for anybody that smokes cannabis. It's great. But I think these plants are being manipulated. They're being genetically modified to get kids, mainly young men, really high. And I think there's a better way. And, one thing I'll say about this, the last thing I'll probably say about it is, the essence of the cannabis plant, the female energy around it, because she's been so abused and modified and kind of tormented, in the way that she's been like brought to the world. She's a cruel mistress now. Like you've messed with the essence of this sacred plant. And now it's like picture, there's nothing like a woman scorned. And this is a female energy plant. And this was all shown to me in plant medicine ceremony. It's like, there's nothing like a woman scorned. And that's the essence of this plant. And when you mess with that, I think she'll give you certain, insights and ideas and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I believe she will take more than she gives the user. And that's just my experience, teach their own. But I also would say, usually people or men, I'd actually say usually people start smoking cannabis when they're boys.
Yep.
And the men that I really admire in this world, that I look up to, they don't smoke cannabis anymore. It's like a boy thing that it's like you got to grow out of at one point. And it's like, that's the way, and I don't mean any judgment towards that. That's just my observation is like, yeah, we all smoked weed when we were boys and that's okay. But like, there's time to like, just put that aside and like do man stuff now and like create better times for our future generations. So, that's going pretty deep there, Cal, but
no,
that's where I'm at.
That's what I love that. And well, with regards to boys and men, I know you're part of at least one or like your male relationships are really important to you. How long have you kind of been in that kind of space with other men? And were you, when you were in those hustle days, when you had the car and all that, and if you were, how have those groups changed? Because I know, it's, we met, it wasn't at a men's group. It was a little gathering, but I got introduced to you through Josh Trent, who you guys spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, we're bros.
And so he's like, you need to meet Alex. And, I was like, I do need to meet Alex. And so it's such a huge part of my life. I'm just always interested in how it impacts people. And I think, especially here in Austin, there's a lot of that. And I very much take it for granted at times.
Yeah.
When I go up to Idaho for the summertime, a couple of those guys maybe are part of men's groups, but there's 30 that aren't.
Yeah.
Their men's group is playing golf, which I get it. Yeah. Like, that's fun. And it's not a men's group, just so you know.
Yeah.
It's a boys group, which is great. Go and play golf with the boys.
Yeah.
But I'm curious kind of your experience and
I love this.
Almost as a way to I just want to inspire other men to like, there's so much in this part of my life that I want to give people a little bit of a nudge.
Oof. I love this question. It's bringing up a lot of me for sure. I love this. This is great. I'll start with the code, what it is for me. Like I've been blessed, fortunate, and cursed with in my life that a lot of people wanted to be my friend for whatever reason. I have that. I attract people. I'm magnetizing, whatever,
I get that.
You get it, right?
Yeah.
Have that energy. And with that comes all kinds of stuff. So it's like if someone said to me, what do you call a friend? What is a friend to you, Alex Wolfe? Like for someone that so many people want to be your friend. At this stage of my life moving forward, a friend to me is someone that raises my consciousness with me. If someone's going to be in my life and they're, whether it's consciously or subconsciously bringing me down, I wouldn't call that a friend. I could meet that person where they're at and I could try to give them some codes and some light and encourage them. But like my friends, my real friends, Cal, are people that raise my consciousness and I could raise their consciousness. And that's why I love hanging out with you. We always have super insightful conversations, open, curious, vulnerable, and sharing and encouraging. And these are wonderful qualities that, men can bring to the table. And that's why men's work is so awesome. That's why we're so fortunate and blessed to live here in Austin. We're just surrounded by so many great men, conscious thought leaders and inspiring entrepreneurs and all kinds of stuff. And that's what really, really gets me going is like the iron sharpens iron thing, Proverbs, back to the Bible, iron sharpens iron. And it's so valuable for me because like I just love that, getting around other men. Like I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. Actually, the opposite, actually. I want to be the student in the room that's just there to learn, and be curious, much like yourself, and like bounce ideas off each other and encourage each other and push each other to like go past our limits, get out of the comfort zone and like, let me see what I could do. Can I lift more weights? Can I, do 10 more push-ups? Can I go run 3 more miles in the trails or whatever? Like that's what gets me fired up. And that's what I love about Austin is just being around all these great men. It's inspiring. It's like, yeah, you're in the big leagues here. Like there's so many great guys. So like, how are you going to show up? And not necessarily in a competitive way, but a collaborative way, like an inclusive way of like, how can we support each other and grow? Yeah.
That's like, I want to interject here because that's such an important part of kind of any men's group that I've been a part of. It's like nobody wants anything from anybody. There's no angling. There's no leveraging relationships for your own good. Yeah. It's what does everybody just bring to the group?
Yeah.
And there's no expectation that anything's going to come out of it except just share our gifts.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And you feel it when someone isn't doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Because the resonance is so high. Yes. So it's like, hey, wait a second. And that's
who invited this guy.
Right. And it goes back to what you're saying earlier too, which was so insightful, is like when you show up to something wanting to take, it's a totally different energy than when you show up wanting to give and to share and to lift and support. It's just a different energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm really, here for. And that's why I love friendships like ours, even though it's new. It's just like, I feel this supporting and like lifting each other up the mountain as we go. Like I'm just, like I said, I'm a fellow traveler along here in this journey of life. And it's like, hey, I see some tough stuff over here. And you're like, yeah, I see this over here. Cool. Let's like get each other to the top of this mountain together, And I'm so glad you asked this question because like it's such a key thing for young men out there. Like it really just align yourself with people that are going to raise your consciousness. Like you will become, if you hang out with 5 millionaires, you'll be the 5th, 6th millionaire. You hang out with 5 drunkards, you're going to be the 6th drunk guy at the party. So like choose your environment, choose your friends so wisely. And like the code that I got of like, your real friends are people that raise your consciousness, because when you keep raising your consciousness, raise your frequency, you're going to find yourself in rooms and opportunities and resources that like you never even thought possible, but it takes doing those things that nobody's really doing. And it's just, I love that question so much. It brings so much out of me because it's really one of my biggest motivators in life.
And then how often do you get together with said group?
Well, I get together. There's different groups, you know. And I'm excited about the Monday night group,
right.
of course. But that's awesome. I get together with my men's group every 2 weeks on Wednesdays, and I get together with my pickleball guy group that we really push each other in that friendly, competitive way. But there's that. I get together with the Bible study group, So it's different groups, different things, but they're all have the one thread is to like raise consciousness, And the men's group one is really valuable because to be vulnerable with other men is very important because, it's very tricky to be vulnerable with your woman and your wife and stuff like that, and your girlfriend or whatever, because they're looking to us to be a role, and with good reason. Like, I believe like we're the provider, we're the protector, we're the leader of the household. And it's good to be vulnerable with your wife, but it's like you got to like get to a certain point where it's
there's nuance to that, brother. Yeah.
You want to share on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been my biggest challenge. And I'd say for obvious reasons, but I'll just state them as being the provider and protector and leader. There's this fear that if I show vulnerability, otherwise known in a lot of ways as weakness, that there will be less trust and less attraction, and then eventually I'll be out.
Wow.
And I mean, it takes a lot of steps to get there, arguably, but that's going on, subconsciously or unconsciously. Why? Because of what you talked about before, in that 10% of our brain, that's all that programming.
Yeah.
And no matter how much work I've done up to this point on a kind of unlearning that, it's still there. And when I bring it into my awareness, I get to see that it's not true. But it's the bringing it into my awareness, which is the challenge. So back to the pausing is important. It's like really tuning in, like what's happening right now. And so over the last year, I've, had this, I've talked about it here before, but like just a few financial things that I've needed to unlock.
Sure.
And without the unlocking, there's been not been a great flow of funds. And for someone who identifies again as the provider and someone who hasn't quite got it through their head that they've already provided, and that they don't need to keep providing more and more and more and more to earn, to continue to keep that love. It's just all that shit that I was taught at a young age through observation and through my perception of what I needed to do to be loved. And it wasn't necessarily providing, but it was doing good stuff, doing well in school, so on and so forth, achievement. And that's where I am at with that. And when, in the few instances over the last year, when I had the aha moment of, I am completely shut down to Peyton right now, that I need to share what's going on in a way where, to your point, I'm not just spewing it all over, right? There's some kind of controlled
delivery.
Yes. My release, and just to share with her. And it's like, whatever the unconscious fear is of how she's going to respond, she comes with such incredible grace and like whatever we need to do, why I can't believe your word, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, and like, what can I do? And it's like, oh yeah, that she always shows up that way. And so that's not like every time I got something on my mind, just like
spew.
But it's, when it's really affecting me and in turn affecting our relationship, that's where I need to have the courage to communicate with her.
Yeah.
And that's just been my big challenge.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of men can relate to that, and obviously certain levels to that. But yes, I think it's a common thing. I think it's actually a common thing. And I hear it a lot in men's group. And I think that's why men's group is so important, is because you can go to men's group. We could go and you can spew. You can just say all this stuff, and you have a space where you can be completely vulnerable, and the other men are there to hold the space and support you. And then you get reflections back from, 5, 6, 7 different men that are seeing things that maybe you're not seeing, and they give these reflections. And then it's like, okay, you got that off your chest. You took this heavy weight off the chest. And then it's like, okay, with that heavy weight off the chest, you have more capacity and space to go and then have the conversation at the right time. And it's not like it's burdening, it's not burdening the mind or the psyche. And it's like one can go to their partner or their loved one and have the space or the clarity to how to frame it. And then the vulnerability can come in microdoses that they could handle, because you have so much space and capacity that you're aware of where they're at. Because sometimes, not always, and I'm not saying projecting this on you or Peyton or anything, but sometimes the woman is just not in the space they're like, whoa, wait a second. You're the provider protector here. I'm not your mom. I'm not your psychiatrist. I'm not.
Whoa.
What's going on here? They just don't, they don't have the space.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's where I see, some men, they get themselves in this thing is they start treating their wife or their partner, their loved one, like it's their mom or their psychiatrist. And it's this, and it's it's damaging to the polarity. And you got to keep the polarity strong, because that's the male feminine thing. And when the roles get reversed, man, it is like you're saying, it's good luck getting out of that. Most men don't get out of that. Then they go look to another strong man to be that, whether they even realize it or not. So I think you're onto it, Cal. Your instincts are correct about it. It's wow, I can't just go and spew all this stuff. And I think that's what men's group, why it's so valuable, is because you could go and get these reflections, get it off the chest, and it shows men that it's actually, hey Enzo, it's great to be vulnerable. There's power in vulnerability, especially with other men. That's what we weren't taught growing up, right?
Yeah. And it's almost like a bit of a test run or a dress rehearsal, right? When you're you kind of throw it out there, because the fear is I'm going to be rejected by, your partner for one, but this is a little easier, because it's if these guys reject me, at least I still have my wife, right? But you throw it out there, and what do we find in every case? There's a deeper connection. There's a I get that. I've been there. I'm there now.
Yeah.
Thanks for voicing that. This is what's on my heart. This is what's, I'm carrying. And it's we get to put all this, onto the table, into the room.
Yeah.
And then it's it takes the heaviness, the sting, the fear, it just dissipates, and we get to. It's you see it when you go to these big, I don't know if you've ever been to a Byron Katie event or something like that, right? Where people come up and they reveal some super intimate stuff.
Yeah.
And you can't believe the courage they have. Yeah. And then the amount of love and acceptance that people, and then they inspire someone to do something that, to get something off their chest. And it's just, but when we hold it in, man, we get in that shame spiral, and we just, we kind of work ourselves into that rumination of all the bad that can happen.
Yeah,
and it really,
the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's crippling.
Yeah, it is crippling.
It's crippling. So with that in mind, this is the code that I would share with anybody that's willing to learn, is like anytime you catch yourself in that fear, uncertainty, and doubt, just know that it's coming from the conditioned mind, which has been programmed, like you said, from, upbringing. And it's not true. It's not based in absolute truth. It's a program that can be let go. And then what's the opposite of that is tapping into the other side of the mind, intuition, creativity, imagination, divinity. Like that is true. Like that is your true essence. That is your true nature. So now it's like when I hear that voice coming up with the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt, like I know it's not based in absolute truth. So I know it's not God talking to me. It's that limited, it's the opponent. You know how we started this whole thing. Yeah. It's the opponent trying to keep us in comfort, protect us. So it has a role because once we unleash from the opponent, what's it going to do? Well, now it serves us, right? So it's like, I think it all goes back to that. And for someone, once you start identifying that voice as like, no, that's not true. And then you start to shift the game here, and it's like, okay, how can I approach this situation out of love? Like what would love say? What would Jesus say in this situation? Like it's hard to find a woman out there that's not going to be receptive to that approach.
A good woman, at least.
A good woman, at least. Exactly. Which is what we want and deserve. So yeah, it's the shift, and I love that it came around to this, Cal. Is really is shifting from those fear-based thoughts into the love-based thoughts. It's so simple, not always easy, but if one could do that, it opens up a lot of doors.
I think it's a perfect place to put a pin in it.
Cool, man.
Where can people find you?
Eons.com is the company, and I'm very reachable through that. And my Instagram, I'm pretty active on my Instagram at Mr. Alex Wolfe. Constantly posting things, and I'm sure I'll get a bunch of feedback from this, which I love.
By the way, your Instagram's a great follow. Great thanks. Clips and great the read it in the book. That's a great series, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, really enjoyed that. So then we'll and you'll have an unlearn discount code for all these amazing products that I am currently using and will be using. So hit me up if you want any further insight, and certainly reach out to Alex as well.
Thank you so much, brother.
Thanks for being here, brother. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, much love.
Thank you.